No, BT. His internet, I think, is what it
Does he
is.
have a?
What do
Is
you
he
mean?
using a hotspot? Oh no! Oh shit! He's there! He's there! He's
Hearing
there!
audio, yeah.
He's there!
We're making progress.
Which is super odd because I was talking. I thought Hudson was like, oh, there he is. He's freaking out or something. And then I went dark.
Yeah, dude. You just checked out.
My bad.
Boom. All right, we're live now.
Okay.
All right, what's up? So, I guess we'll do some introductions. So, we got Hudson, and go ahead and say something about yourself, Huddy.
Yeah, I don't know what more to say for the podcast. I'm a police officer out in A County in Arizona. Army with Danley and the rest of these gentlemen here.
Word. So then I got Sanchez over there with that Cookie Monster thing.
Yeah, name's Enrique, last name Sanchez, as these guys know me by. I'm a senior metrologist for Honeywell Aerospace, so that's pretty much how I'm contributing to this. I met these guys in the Army, love these guys to death. That's it.
And then Beachy, Old Trenton. Beachy, can you hear us? No. Nixon.
I don't think he's there anymore.
Unfortunate.
Are we still doing intro?
Yeah, go for it. Talk. You're the one that.
Boom. Jazz Nixon, father of two. Army man, just like the rest of these guys, me and Danley. Is that Sanchez?
No, it's not the same Sanchez.
I was about to be like, what, man? He got a new voice? I didn't know you could do that. I want to get that work done.
Oh, man of many talents, brother.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Father of two, man. Businessman. So I'm just trying to figure life out. That's what I do.
So I'm gonna stop streaming for a second. So what's interesting is Beachy's not here or he's not talking. If you're here, Beachy, just talk whenever. So
Bless you, man.
Our podcast, Nixon, Beachy actually listened to it. I think it was like a week ago. And then he started like making comments to me and like saying stuff about what we were doing and talking about how we were wild as fuck and shit in Germany and blah, blah, blah. And then I think it was like literally the next day that you hit me up.
Really?
Yeah. So. And you hit me up saying something about, you're going through whatever, and you needed to vent. So. We're here to vent.
I mean, son. As you know, Andrew, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he took his life, bro. Somebody like that took their life. And that shit fucked with me, like, heavy.
Just so everybody's on the same page, who is Andrew? So
Andrew is Joshua Andrew, E5, served with him in Afghanistan. In Alpha Company. I went to basic with this dude, man. We were in Germany together. He was in Charlie. I was in Bravo though. But we still was cool, Always stayed in touch with him. And then we got the opportunity to serve in the same platoon in Afghanistan. So me and that dude was just like me and you, Daddy. We was locked in from day one, man.
Yeah. And it seems like that's more and more. Where was Andrew at?
He was in Washington State, man.
Oh, okay.
If you saw how his life was going at the time, you would have thought this man had a farm, he had a beautiful wife, just got married, bro. It was like one of those. It was like literally like a fucking movie. Some shit you see in the movie. Like, he was doing good, man.
Yeah.
And then I got that motherfucking phone call, and I was like, what? Like, wow. And the crazy thing about it, bro, is that like I didn't like. I mean, obviously, we always say, you know, you never really know what's going on with somebody, but like, I kind of had the inkling a little bit,
Yeah.
but like also at the same time, I was dealing with my own demons, so I didn't reach out,
Yeah.
and that shit bothered me
I can definitely
because the reason
understand.
why it bothered me because like I beat my demons, like bro, the day I got the call, I literally was like having a conversation with my wife and was just like breaking down to her, like, yo, like I finally realized, like, you know, like God forgives me for all of my sins, you know what I'm saying? So it's like finally I can honestly say, you know what I'm saying, like I'm at peace with a lot of shit now. And like at that moment my phone rang and you know, it was just like a voice that I haven't heard in years. And it was like, yo, you know what I'm saying? What's up, sir? How's, you know, life? Like, motherfucker, like, I ain't even think you was gonna ever call me. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's up? How are your kids? Like, what's up? And then, but at the same time, you know, and I'm sorry for my little man in the background, but at the same
Don't
time, I knew it
apologize.
was like, yo, I haven't heard your voice in years. Like, bro, I hope you ain't about to give me no motherfucking bad news. And he did. So for me, it was just like, come on, man. Like, it bothered me because it was like, damn, like me and him talked. Like me and Andrew talked, bro. And it was like me and you talked. And I always told you, yo, if you ever fucking needed me, I'm there.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You know what I'm saying? And like you out of all people, I would think, boom, like to hit you, you know, like you would hit me if something was to pop off. And like again, vice versa. And that's where I'm at with you. Like it's been bothering me for a minute. I was like, yo, I need to get some shit off my chest. I was like, I'm hitting up Danley. That's bottom line. Because the last time we talked, you know, it felt good. That shit was therapeutic for me.
For sure. For sure.
You feel me? So it was just like, but like, son, for me, it's like it's so hard to like see such a good soul go like that, bro. Like it bothered the fuck out of me. But like I know, and I understand. I guess I say I know what those demons are like, but like. I don't understand why people just don't like talk.
I mean, I feel like so I'm still, I guess you could say, active in the military. I don't really want to say too much about that, but even in the platoon, right? Like when we're doing our thing or whatever, I make sure to say certain things or allow the opportunity for certain things to be said, if that makes sense. Because I know when we were growing up in the army, it was like you shut the fuck up and you Roger up, and it's
Yeah,
you paint within the fucking lines type of shit. And
yeah,
if you said anything, you were looked at a certain way. So we've all become like habituated to this belief that to be a man is to play this role, like this persona that you have to put on for everybody else. When at the end of the day, like ain't nobody calling me a bitch. You can't call me out my name, you know what I'm saying? But I can sit here and tell you that I go through this, that, and the other, and this is how I went through my shit, and this type of shit fucks with me, or like I cry when I watch certain movies, type of shit. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that doesn't make me less of a man. And I think me and Hudson and Sanchez have been talking about this stuff quite a bit. And then Beachy, whenever he unmutes himself or gets his computer unfixed, like we all talk about this kind of shit. And my goal, I guess, with Brothers in Time is to like show some type of like solidarity between all of us veterans. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna get a little philosophical for a second, but like when you start to think in these realms of like mental health and stuff, there's like this thing that can be said where everything that you know about reality is mediated through your senses. So everything external to you could be a lie, right? So like your eyes could be lying to you, your touch could be lying to you, the things that you hear could be not real. You know what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
So once you come to that understanding, it also puts you in like this isolated box, or like this black hole that you can't escape from, right? Because at the end of the day, we all want a connection with another human, right? So like that's what I got from the army, at least, is like I have this band of brothers, or like, you know, however cliche that is, but I know that they're going to always be there for me, and I know that they have what's best for me in mind. You know what I mean? But I also know that everybody's busy and shit. So that leads to like problems in my personal life where just because we didn't deploy together, I looked at you a different type of way. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't trust you. Like why can I trust you? How can I trust you? And this, that, and the other. And then that led to like problems with my wife and in my personal relationships where like I don't ever know, right? There's like this, it's hard to explain exactly, but there's like this mental health process, or like this mode of thinking that you can come where when you're a good infantryman, right, you can predict the enemy's movements, right? That's our goal, is to put ourselves in a position to where we can have the greatest advantage over the enemy, and it not putting ourselves on this back foot, so to speak, if that makes sense. But when you're talking about like with a woman, I can't tell you how many times I've been with my wife and I've told her that like I know why she's doing something, and she's telling me that she's doing it for a different reason, but I'm like, no, that's bullshit. You're lying to me. The only reason you would do this is because of this and because of that and because you think this about me. So I'm trying to like read her mind. So there's been times where I thought that I could like read other people's minds and their intentions, and I had to go to therapy. I had to go to a lot of therapy to learn that you can't really do that. And what's interesting is that me and Sanchez here were talking about this the other day, but Sanchez does something called, I'm gonna fucking butcher this name, metrology. Is that right, Sanchez?
Yeah, right on the money.
And I saw this motherfucker post that shit on Facebook, and I was like, did this motherfucker spell that wrong, bro? Is he talking about a meteorologist, not a not a metrologist? So I had to Google it, and it said something about like the science of measurements, and like just talking to him about. So I mean, I'm gonna have him briefly say it, but like frequency modulation has me opening my mind to like a whole bunch of other shit. So Sanchez, what is frequency modulation in the most simplest terms, I guess?
Okay, so the simplest way I can explain modulation is, think of you having a waveform, right? So think of, this is kind of inaccurate, but it'll paint a good picture, right? So let's say there are waves in the ocean, right? And those waves are there by themselves. There is nothing altering their state, there's nothing going on, there's nothing really special with it. So you have a carrier frequency, is that wave. You throw surfers on top of that wave, right? And now think of that carrier frequency being that wave, and now you've got another wave on top of it. So essentially you have a waveform that is riding on top of a carrier frequency. And that is how we are able to pass information through frequencies. Now there are different ways you can actually modulate carrier frequencies. You can change their amplitude, and they're, by changing their amplitude, you can decipher the information that way. That's called, everybody has heard this term, but nobody's really, looked into the terminology, but that's where AM comes from. That's an amplitude modulation. And you can also, to answer your question, Danley, that you asked me the other day, yes, you actually can alter the frequency on it too. So you can actually alter frequency on the carrier frequency using a modulation signal, so you can pass information that way. And that's what we call frequency modulation, also known as FM. So these are, both terms that we're used to hearing and we're used to seeing, but AM and FM are just two different forms of modulating information, which is in that spectrum of wavelength, we're talking about audio. And that's how we're able to modulate our voices and how loud we are using those two methods. Now, there's other super complicated methods also of modulating signals. Like you can get into, digital signals where you have square waveforms, and those are ones and zeros. But I think we'll probably get into that at some other time. But so, basic terms, you've got a carrier frequency, and you put another waveform on top of it, so you can read information and pass information.
So for me, when I hear shit like that now, Nixon, what it does to me is like when we were in the army, right? You know, like inbitters and fucking ASIPs and, you know, all of the radios that we were using, you know what I mean? That's the way that they communicate with each other, right? They just send a signal and then they encrypt the signal that's on this carrier frequency or whatever. You see what I'm saying? And then we also understand this in a different way, like when it comes to IEDs. And I know you have some specialized training where like you can build them now or whatever, but when you have like a 6 feet of copper wire and you put a fucking electric charge to it, it emits a signal or a frequency or whatever. So then when we're putting stuff on it, it's sending data from one point to another. So we do that in everyday life when we're communicating. So like right now, if I'm talking to Hudson, I'm sending a signal. And then inside of that signal, there's like intents and meaning and purpose. And I'm trying to give it to him, but the way in which he's interpreting it does not always line up with the way I'm sending it. And then for me, that's where I'm like having to like delineate between what I have control over versus what I'm not in control of. And when you come out of the army, I mean, you have Sergeant Major fucking tell you that your private got a fucking DUI when he was on leave in Texas and you're stationed in New York, and he's telling you it's your fucking responsibility. Like, how the fuck am I in control of that, Sergeant Major? Like, what the fuck? So when we come out of the army, that's just, we have that same mentality of like, I can control everybody. I can control everything. If I just said the right thing at the right time, this thing would not have happened. You know what I mean? You still there, Nixon?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Word.
To kind of caveat off of that for a second, so I'm just taking quick notes in a book as we're speaking. But when you're talking about good infantrymen can predict the enemy movement, I take that more as like we can maintain the initiative, right?
Yeah.
So with that, I think that we bleed that more into our personal lives as well. That in layman's terms of what you're saying is that if we can maintain the initiative in any given social environment, we can dictate the outcomes. Not only predict them, but dictate them. Because if we're in control of that initial movement, if I get to be the white chess pieces and move first, and I get to set the example of what the outcome is going to be. I did get lost, Sanchez, when you were talking about AM and FM. I got caught up in the physicality of that far more than
no worries, man. You just dropped some truth, though.
I'm really curious about what you're saying, so we'll clarify that probably at a different time. I don't want to step on the topic at hand here, but now I'm really interested in like how frequencies operate in the physical space far more than the analogy space that we're utilizing them in. Because that shit is fucking me up a little bit. But
wait till we get into vision and all that shit. It's
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, nah, it was a lot. It was a lot going on with that whole explanation. I was like, okay, so like,
badass, dude.
I'm like, so you telling me the sound of my voice can dictate how you interpret what I'm saying?
100%.
That's what Ebonics is, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Ebonics can tell you like the my relative position to you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I say fuck yeah versus fuck nah, or like the way I'm enunciating the words will tell you whether or not I'm a friend or an enemy, and it could be the same sentence.
We can say the same sentence just with different tonality. Obviously, like if you ask me if I'm doing okay, I'm like, I'm good. Versus, bro, I'm good. Like it's the same sentence, different tonality, completely different shift in meaning.
Nixon, say what's up, motherfucker.
What's up, motherfucker?
And then say it to somebody that you're trying to fight. You know what I mean?
You'll say it like with a more authoritative voice.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point there. Like that's the signal that you're sending. Now the question is whether or not there's, for instance, the receiver of said signal, if they grew up in a certain household, if they're going to take it the way that you're meaning it. You know what I mean? And I know you've had that fight with your wife. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I meant.
Yo, that's not what I meant.
That's every day.
All the stuff.
Everyday shit.
I think everybody here could agree with that.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I didn't mean it like that.
Yeah, I didn't mean that.
But
you were a little too high pitched on one of the words, and now it's on.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you used the wrong descriptor for something.
yo, we just had that
Anything.
argument about spaghetti. Like, for real. I was like, yo, I ain't say it was gross like my son did, but like, it's not. He's
Hey,
just 5. He don't know what it is. He like,
she
yeah,
doesn't have the right encryption key. If we're gonna talk technical fucking terms. So you guys have all used fucking radios. You've encrypted them. You guys know what the basic dumbed down explanation of what an encryption is. You're pretty
No.
much utilizing an algorithm, and the only way so you're modulating that signal, that carrier frequency. Let's say fucking Danley, they tell you what frequency to communicate in, right? And you set it to that frequency. That's your carrier frequency. Boom. That's where everybody's looking for your signal. That's where everybody's locked into. Now, obviously, something that's unencrypted, you can just drop into that frequency, and there you go. Now you're picking up everybody's communications there. But those keys are very important because when you start encrypting stuff, there is essentially a very specific algorithm in which those signals are modulated, I guess. But without that encryption key that can decipher that algorithm, there's no way that they can hear it on your comms. So it's like your wife not having that proper encryption key. You're talking, but she's not really understanding or deciphering or really putting together the pieces as to what your true intentions are.
I was about to go a little bit further out there with conspiracy theories. You know what I'm
Shit,
saying?
throw it, bro. Send that shit. Go.
There's like this idea that there's some group behind the scenes that's controlling the world, and they use signals or symbols or symbology to send messages to each other. And if you don't have the right encryption, you don't know what they're saying to each other. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And
Fucking do that. Essentially, yeah, bro.
What's interesting to me, though, is that most veterans, I'll say most, right? Generally speaking, because I was one of these people too. It's that when you come home or even beforehand, you have this belief that the world is dangerous and that you have no control and that there's these people who are out to get you, right? They're out to hurt you specifically, or like your way of being, I guess it is. So when you're reading these signals or these symbols on the TV or in reality as it presents itself to you, you see everything as negative, right? So like we've been doing a lot of work recently on the Army side with the troop leading procedures, and with that you do certain course of action development for the orders process, right? So like the 3 types of combat orders, op order, frago, and a warno. And inside of that you're making courses of action for the execution piece, and one of those courses of action is always called most dangerous, and then one of them is always called most probable. And what happens is in the Army, we always prepare for the most dangerous course of action, right? The most dangerous usually being the enemy has QRF within 5 minutes away, and they can bring fucking tanks onto your position within 5 minutes, and they have every hilltop around here with a TRP, and they can drop fucking arty on you. So the entire world at that point is fucking terrifying, if that's true. Now, most probable, if we're talking about, you know what I'm saying, Afghans, do they really have APCs? I mean, maybe, potentially, but we have ISR assets where we can see these shits from miles away if we really needed to. You know what I mean? So, like, when you get out of the Army, we keep this mentality of, like, most dangerous course of action is the way we approach everyone and everything. And until you become aware of that, you don't really occupy the same reality as everybody else. You exist in this other world that is the enemy at most points. Because I could pull up my Facebook right now and show you how tyranny is winning and the government's trying to kill you and they're trying to take over. And if you don't stop them now, you'll never get to stop them. Like all that shit.
Now I have a question. Do you see that more in people that have deployed, or in, I mean, Hudson's case, he's been all over, and his job was to look out and, always be aware. Do you see it with individuals that have not deployed coming out, or do you think it's more of someone that's, because people that I know now that are out, they're a lot more, like you're saying, like posting things about the government and stuff like that, and it's like it's something that you feel threatened by, I guess. Yeah. I don't really know anyone. I mean, I do know individuals that did not deploy and are like that. And I think that's just because in a way, once you're in the military, dude, you lose a lot of trust. And if you look at the government, I guess if we're talking about the government, we're working for the government, and they continuously fail in a lot of ways. I mean, just think about, our training just a few days ago or a couple of weeks back. It was, we ate the same meal over and over again. It's like, you're failing.
There was
You're
E. coli in the water.
Failing. Yeah, there's
the
E.
water's
coli
dirty.
in the water.
You can't drink
So,
the water.
So like for me, it's like when I had some weird thing come upon where I had vertigo for 45 days. So the first couple days I was like, this is super weird. I went to the TMC, got checked out. They're like, yo, it's probably a virus. It'll be gone in 7 days. I'll go back in, right? And they come back and they're like, okay, this is weird. They start asking questions. It's like, well, I've gotten 2 vaccines. I had anthrax and typhoid given to me at the same time. And then if you go back and look at my records, it says they were 2 weeks apart. But everyone knows when you go through SRP, they're just jabbing you with everything and anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I was like, I tried to be like, hey, like provider, I think it might have something to do with this. Like I am healthy. Like, thank God it was during leave. So I was just like hanging out. And then I couldn't function. My brain, like my speech started to go, my memory started to go, like things started to go because my body was trying to compensate for the balance situation. Well, it took, and I'm like, hey man, like this is really affecting me. And they couldn't schedule me an MRI for like another, I think it was 20 days. So like I lost my trust in that medical system through the military, right? And then think about, and that's just one specific case. When you look at, I don't know how many other things if you do 3 years to 20 years, how fast you lose trust in just that government section. I know I kind of went on a tangent on that, but
No, you're good.
No, I think everybody here has had a very similar experience like that. I know I have.
Absolutely.
so then
Well,
when you go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
No, I'm just saying, so when you get out and then because I'm going to be honest, when I was in the military, I didn't give a shit what was going on the outside, right? It was like, it was just the military and my boys. That's all that mattered. And then when you get out, you don't have that organization, right? And then you start looking, and then especially if you deploy, you start looking at your country and the needs and everything else. And then you're like, I already done, like the Army's failed in a lot of ways and I don't trust that section. So how can I trust any other section of it or anything else out there?
I think that's been kind of the curse of all military branches since everything post World War II.
Oh, yeah.
So World War II had a clear beginning. No question asked, we were attacked. Every conflict after that has had, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Especially all us like GWAT guys. So the whole formation of GWAT is like, who did it? The entire initiation, that start point is fucked up. So automatically everyone joining has questions. Automatically, right? And then like you multiply that out through all of your service that your NCOs are telling you, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's bugging me. I don't know what's happening. You have the medical systems fail you. You have the logistics systems fail you. You have every system fail you in some way, shape, or form. And then you have a mission set that reinforces skepticism. So I know in my case with protection, for knee-jerk examples, what came to mind when you were talking about that is when I got out of active duty and came home, I had fucking route plans to go to my gym. I wouldn't take the same route to the gym every day.
Word.
Right?
I did the
Like,
same thing.
I don't want to be on the same fucking road because that's how you get fucked up, right? So I would like stagger them out that I would take this road 2 days in a row and then I would take this way home on the way back, or I'd take that way there and then this way back, right? And that's all like when I brought that up to people, I brought it up in a joking manner of like, well, we got to change the routes so we don't get fucked up, you know? And automatically everyone's like, that's fucking weird. You have a whole system of people because I went straight from active duty to law enforcement, and those mindsets, as similar as they're supposed to be, vastly different. We can't communicate the same. We can't do anything the same. So when I get a silly call that's like, you know, my cat's stuck in the tree and the neighbor's music is too loud, I'm like, is that a fucking ambush? That's what that sounds like. You're wanting me to roll in there and get fucked up. Everyone else is like, this is just a dumb call. I'm just going to take my time getting there. So it's like the modalities are vastly different, and those communication methods become different. But I'm curious to see where those mindsets change, because even when you brought up the non-deployed individuals have that, I think it's just the inoculation of fear. Is that from day one you're fucking taught, Everything's out to get you. Nothing's safe. Nothing's real. Be careful.
Yeah. So I think we're talking at like three different frames of reference, and I think it's important to like delineate these things where they belong. So all of us are NCOs, or were NCOs when we were in. So there's three levels of leadership. You have strategic, organizational, and direct. So the question, that same question you asked, BiT, is at a strategic level, at an organizational level, and at a direct level. So as far as like your experience goes with like the medical professions, right, that I would consider that a direct level, because I don't think that every doctor is a shitter. You know what I mean? I think there are some good doctors, but the ones that work for the Army are, for a lack of a better term, socialist, right? That you don't come to the Army to work for the Army because you're a good doctor. Number two, you can talk like about that same thing as far as like the Army failing at certain points. The Army has regulations, right? The Army has certain things that will keep it from failing. It's whether or not people are following the regulation, right? Like the fact that we were drinking fucking water that had been contaminated with E. coli. If they were cleaning the water buffalo every day, that wouldn't have been a problem.
Let alone the unit verifying the chlorine residue.
Yeah.
So that anytime a buffalo is deployed to the field, the unit has to verify that there's chlorine in that water. Nobody was doing anything. So regulations were failing.
Golly!
The regulations weren't failing. Our adherence to the doctrine was
That's
failing.
What I meant.
You know what I mean? No, you're good. And then at a strategic level, when we're talking at like about Afghanistan, and I think we talked about this in our Afghanistan talk, like one of the first YouTube videos I did, there was never a clear end state to Afghanistan. And whenever there was a clear defined end state, it changed the very next year, right? So we've seen the government doesn't necessarily know what they're doing. So I wouldn't say that your fear is misplaced. I would say that it's an understanding of non-duality. There is no such thing as right and wrong as the way that we grew up thinking there was. And I think that's the largest problem that I had, was that there is no right fucking answer. The Army doesn't give me the right answer anymore when I get out. There's no regulation to everyday life about how the fuck I'm supposed to do this, that, or the other thing, right?
Well, is anyone here still active duty?
No, absolutely.
No. So all of us went through Soldier for Life. All of us did that stupid out processing system.
Yeah.
That was nothing. It was nothing. That I didn't retain shit from that, other than that there was a job fair for positions that are literally what I felt like I'm more qualified.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Is this what the reality views me as the outside? What it did is it generated a shit ton of insecurity. It didn't give me any sort of forethought of like, hey, so remember, no one's got fucking rifles out there on a day-to-day basis. So relax.
I think so. I want to harp on that because I've been doing it with people that are getting out, and I think a lot of people, well, you have to look at your unit too. I mean, I had to go to do, like, I did 45 days of training, and then I did another 35 days of training a month after that. And that was all in the time. They even took away my leave days. I had 60 days of leave, and I was only able to take 30. They had put a mandate out that I had to go to this training. So it took away that transitional period for me, right? And technically you're supposed to have those 6 months, right? The kind of like out process.
Yeah.
But your unit makes it so difficult for you to do that. Or in I think, like, as an NCO, if you're active or even like guard or any situation, you need to push your soldiers to take advantage of everything, because there's so many things you can do. Like, I have a friend right now I had a buddy in the Army that ended up hurting himself. He's out processing. He got to work with Game and Fish up in Alaska, and he was transitioning. He was getting paid military doing that, but was working with Game and Fish. Like, there's opportunities there. It's just they're not really given to you, and I think that falls on leadership to because no one wants to be like, hey, you know, my soldier got out, completely failed, you know, his pace plan, which I always tell everyone to have a pace plan getting out. He failed, and then, you know, is doing horribly, took his life or anything like that. because there is opportunity. But yeah, I completely agree. The courses are very like bare bones. It's not really them providing a lot. It's like you have to go out and seek, and you typically don't have the time, or you're just like, I'm getting out, I don't care. And people think, oh, I got a job lined up with so and so, and then they get out and they work that job, or that job goes to shit or whatever. They don't like the job, and then they're like, well, what the fuck do I do? And you're like that spiraling, soldier. But for anyone that's getting out, I recommend having multiple plans, and definitely make sure, because I've seen them fail. I mean, for my own self, like I thought I had this one plan, and I got out in the middle of COVID, and I was like, what the hell do I do now?
Right. And well, even to see that from the other side a little bit, though, is that when you were active, you might have been a troop that was thinking at the time you're a lifer, right? In my case, and I would see these guys that were out processing for those 6 months, and they fucking abused it. They abused it. They didn't take advantage of the systems, but every day they found out that they can't verify if you have appointments or not. So it'd be PT formation, and they're like, I have an appointment.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
And they just fucking dip. And it formed this resentment shit that you're like, what the fuck? So you multiply that out by being a first sergeant of a unit, and you've got this troop that's like, hey, can I do this and that and this and that? And you're like, no, fuck you. Like, you're just taking advantage of some shit, right?
I don't even remember how the fuck I outpressed out of the Army. Like, it's crazy how we having this conversation. I think I saw a first sergeant. He looked at me, said some stupid shit, signed it, and then like that was it. Like it was like I got nothing, bro. It was just like, yo, all right, like, you don't want to re-enlist, roger that.
Yeah,
like, I actually had a super positive experience getting it.
Well, that's
good for you.
But let me kind of explain this though. It pretty much involved me having to kind of be isolated, because obviously everybody was looking down on, hey, I need this time to go to this course. Right. And it literally came down to black and white versus your opinions. Because, there's regulations, well, at least with the 25th ID, they black and white. You need 12 hours before and 12 hours after this class off. You need to go to these classes and you need to transition the fuck out. And, and instead of the 6 months, it's 18 months.
Oh, wow.
And fucking Christ.
It's 18 months out, and that gives you enough time to line up your shit. And if you wanted to, the last 6 months, you can take an internship. And I did that. I interned my last 6 months in the Army.
That's super cool.
But the thing is, all of the soldiers who are trying to take advantage of this program, they're finding every excuse to give these guys Article 15. Finding every excuse, they've essentially given up on their needs because they're getting out of the Army. Right. When I essentially felt like I had to keep it a secret that I was getting out of the Army until it came down to bare bone necessities, where I told them straight up, when they started asking questions, oh, hey, where's Sanchez or this and that, or I had to miss PT because I had a class at 8 a.m. or some shit like that, and it had to boil down to, hey, Sergeant, like, I mean, thankfully, I was an NCO at the time, so we can all agree that it's a little easier to make your case when you put on those stripes as opposed to a soldier, because essentially I had just stopped giving a fuck. I was just pulling regulations, going up to my NCO and be like, if you have anybody else who outranks this signature on this piece of paper, tell me that I need to stay for PT. And it came, and obviously that those type of confrontations, it builds animosity against each other. It
Absolutely.
I kind of had to deprogram myself from what I've learned in the military, because in the Army, I felt guilty not going to formation. I felt guilty not being a part of the team. I felt guilty not taking part in those inventories. But my wife was kind of there to kind of remind me, like, this is why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it for them, and I hate to say this because it goes against everything I believe. Because I joined the Army at 18 years old. I'm all about the team. I'm all about the fight. I'm all about contributing my part, and those are my soldiers too. My soldiers are out there in the sun. But the 6 months down the road, that's going to be me out there in the streets, And I got my wife. I need to be selfish now. It's time for me to put my foot down and say, hey, you know what? These people are trying to help me, but it's almost as if you guys hate me because I'm getting out, and you're trying to drag me down and prevent me from going.
You see that a lot,
dude. Yeah.
So I had to become selfish, and I had to fight tooth and nail to take full advantage of that program. But now that I've been out for 2 years, I'm very glad that I did, because I can honestly say I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for these programs assisting me and helping me get to where I am.
And
Yeah.
I think that speaks to what we were talking about a second ago about changing the mentality. You know what I mean? Because there's this like the stigma of talking, right? Of talking about your problems. There's this stigma of like the moment you're trying to get out that you're leaving us. You're no
You're a
longer
quitter.
yeah, you're no longer an us, you're a them. And then instead of like there's something that I've noticed in the civilian world that I didn't notice as much in the army, but I didn't you don't notice it with good NCOs, right? A good NCO teaches his soldiers how to take his place because he's learning how to take the place of the person above him. In the civilian world, you see, I'm trying to hold you back because I'm afraid you're going to take my place, and then
Yep.
I have nowhere to go. And that's where I feel like what we're talking about kind of bleeds over. Is like you have to fight for yourself. And then I know I've said this to
Yeah.
most of you, but like that's what you have to do when you go into this this searching, because this conversation started because we lost a friend, right? And
Yeah.
the the problem is that with most of us, when we go to therapy, right, we assume it's the same as like a medical doctor, right? Hey, this thing is wrong with me, fix it. I don't know what it is, fix it. And in therapy, that's not how it works, right? They can't go into your head and move a piece and then it fucking helps, or it changes it or whatever. Now, some medications can do something similar to that, but you still have to do the legwork. And in the esoteric world and in some of the psychological world, it's called shadow work, right? Carl Jung is the one that really talks about this. But you have to do work inside of your brain of like countering certain cognitions that you have, or really fighting back against that voice inside of your head that's telling you you're a piece of shit, or the guilt that you're giving yourself, right? Like if we could analyze that event that happened in Sanchez's life, where these people on the outside of him are telling him that he needs to do this, and then inside of him it's telling him he needs to do it too, but his wife is the voice of reason in that sentence, or that narrative, telling him, hey, you are doing this for you, but it's just more in the future. This is this future thing, it's not this immediate thing. So there's like events, or not events, there when you go to therapy or when you go to start seeking therapy, you can't tell them to fix you. You know what I mean? You have to go in there and be like, this is the fucking problem, I need help. And then whatever help they offer, you have to do it. You don't know any better than them. You don't know what's right. The whole reason you're going in there is because there's something going wrong. And in America, right, there's not people planting IEDs on the street corner to kill you. Like that doesn't happen. And if it does, it's very few and far between, right? Like it's like 1,000,000 to 1 that's going to happen to you. But in Afghanistan, it's like, I don't know, 1 in 5 maybe, depending on the AO that you're in. So when you come home, when you're acting this way and when you're thinking this way, you have to remember that that's affecting the way in which you're interacting with other people.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And me and Nixon know this dude, and I don't really want to call him out, but he like does streaming and shit now, like video game streaming and shit. I think Nixon will know who I'm talking about. But his kid was around this last month or so, like spending the summer with him and shit. And he'll like post him on the stream or this, that, or the other. And the video that he posted going live with his kid the other day, he's like yelling at his kid low key, right? Like he's like, get in the video, freaking damn it. And he's like actually angry. You can hear it in his voice. If you know him, you can hear it in his voice. And you're like, bro, he's a kid. Chill. He's supposed to be your homie. Like, that's your roll dog, bro. You don't talk to him like that. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Because I know damn well if that was me and you hanging out, I'm going to fuck you up. You talk to me that way. I'm going to fucking sleep you. And like,
I got a question.
Go for it.
I mean, how many of us, I mean, there's 5 of us right now, have gone to therapy? Has everyone gone to therapy at all, or?
Damn is a yes.
I've done
I
some
have
sessions. I've done some sessions.
You've done some sessions.
I've done
So
some sessions.
Okay, so the buddy that I'm staying with right now is Army buddy, grew up in the system at one point, rough life, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always seeing him down. And I was just talking to him the other night because it was his birthday, and we got in this conversation, and it was, he's like, I don't feel like I like therapy's for me, right? And that's a common thing to say. And I was like, well, were you not going to therapy? And he was like, yeah, I was. And I was like, why'd you go? And he's like, because I thought it would help, but I just don't think it's going to. And I was like, well, and just like Danley said, are you putting in the work? And he's like, I just don't think it's for me, right? Like he's just pulling the card. Well, then I started to ask more questions because obviously Danley and I have had these conversations and Hudson. I was like, well, like, why were you going? And it kind of sounded like, and it's some of the reason I didn't go right at the time for myself, but he was like, well, my girlfriend at the time wanted me to go. My family wanted to go. And what I'm getting to is how do we, like, at least us, this group, and I definitely want this to become a bigger talk, is how do we get that person to be like, you know what, I'm ready to go? Because it took me some time in like self-evaluation and watching my actions. I'll be the first to tell you I have terrible temper and I let my emotions become anger, right? And I'm very destructive. So it wasn't until I like ripped the door down with my head and had like this mental break to where it was like, I kept being told by, my girlfriend to go. And I was like, yeah. But it wasn't until that like point where I was like, damn, I'm a mess. Like, and, like I'm a hazard to her. I'm like, where am I going with my life? Like, this is no way to be a human. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I mean, maybe because he's 33 years old, and like you don't want to see that person stay like that forever because the good side of them, right? And most of your friends that are like going through a struggle or whatever, you see the good side, but now you're seeing the bad side, and you want to encourage them to go. I just don't know how to initiate.
You just gotta fucking tell him, man. You gotta fucking tell him straight to his face, like, look. Because put it like this, I'm gonna be honest with you. If he is one of those people that's like a real motherfucker, he'll just like accept it coming from you. Like if y'all share the same background, you know what I'm saying? He gonna like if Danley was to told me, yo, Nixon, shut the fuck up, you gotta go to therapy. It appears
Shut the fuck
a little
up, you
bit
gotta go
different
to therapy.
than when somebody else will be saying it to me. Because it's like he knows me. He's seen me at my worst. We've been through some shit. So it's like, all right, like if he's telling me, it's gonna be like, yo, all right, I'll go. So you gotta just fucking tell him it. Because honestly, I wish I would have just, what I'm saying, did that more with certain other, because my boy he wasn't the only one that, it's not the first suicide. Let's just say that. You know what I'm saying? But like now I'm to the point to where like if I see somebody struggling, I'm gonna be like, hey, I know we ain't talking a couple years, or even if we talk every day, motherfucker, go get help. Go get it.
I know,
for real. Go get it.
I know Nixon sees it, but every time I see somebody post some sketchy shit, you know what I mean? Like some self-doubt or whatever the fuck, I'll pop in on their feed and I'll be like, bro, you go to therapy, it helps. I'll do that every time because there's only so much you can do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because a lot of people are not going to open up. A lot of people are not going to talk to you, and that's okay because I've been that guy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But at the same time, it's just like, fucking just grab your nuts, and just, put your pride and ego to the side and just go fucking talk to somebody.
That's the main issue. Yeah. So I know that, especially in the active realm, if you're going to behavioral health, you suck.
Oh yeah,
you suck. You're a pussy, bro. Like there's this whole stigma that exists around that. And then in the civilian realm, it really dictates the credibility of someone who's saying, "Hey, man, you should go to therapy."
You gotta knock a motherfucker out before somebody
all the time.
I think you're not going to therapy now. Like,
right.
I don't want you to get that far.
That self-awareness line, because if everyone here has at least been to therapy once, you had a self-awareness bridge that occurred that you're like, "Fuck, I'm no longer capable of solving this issue," right? I have a lot of friends who refuse to go to therapy. They refuse. They think it's stupid, waste of time, and it's a really toxic environment to be around because they're always like, "I got me. I can handle my shit," and then I get that shit too. I'm like, "Oh, fuck you. I can handle my shit too. I can meditate on this. I can solve this." Yeah, no, it's not paying off in gratitude.
The sad thing is I've done that before. I had a guy going. Well, he was going for a different issue that over a girl or something, but it was just a girlfriend. And at the time I'm giving him shit, but now looking it back, I'm like, man, I should have never have done that, because I mean, he's doing the right thing. If it's having an effect on him, go get help.
Oh yeah, I've been on
I'm glad
the
you
push
reflected
end of
on that,
that
bro.
stigma. I've pushed on that stigma too, and been like, "Fuck,
Yeah,
you need that for?"
That's a good reflection, honestly. If you can, it's gonna sound weird, but if you can have like an out of body experience where you can kind of see yourself in the third person and realize, you know what, my actions were probably not the best in that time.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's a good state of mind to reach, honestly.
But that's
Yep.
that's one of the main pivotal issues that I experience in my line of work is that the self awareness is that about that much. They think they are. They think they're dealing with logic. They think
Yeah.
they're dealing with rationality and objectivity. But in reality, they're like forcing their fucking shadow and all their shit onto the fucking world around them, and thinking that everything's okay with that. And no matter how many times you tell that person, like, bro, like, you're projecting. You are showing the face of yourself to that person. I've seen people treat people who've called the police for issues terribly, terribly, for no other reason other than that they are pissed off at themselves. And it's like, this person might kind of suck, yeah, but they called you. Put yourself aside for that moment. But that self-awareness line barely exists. And I'm not saying that I'm aware of what I'm doing. I've had many calls, many whole days of shift where I've been a fucking dildo, dude, to the public. For nothing more than that, I just fucking didn't sleep good, and I'm woe is meing. But I know my therapy cross line was intrusive thoughts, dude. That was the main one for me, that, like, I didn't understand. And I reached out to that therapist via email and everything at like 3:30 in the morning or 4 a.m. or something, because I was going through these intrusive thoughts that didn't make sense. And the more I asked my coworkers, like, do you ever just have like a thought appear? And they were like, no. And I'm like, you're fucking lying. Like, that was my default and has been my default. Like, I still now live in that realm that I'm like, you're full of shit. Everyone's going through this too. I'm normal. This is a normal thing. I think it's normal to our groups. I think it's normal to us, because that intrusive shit, it still doesn't make sense to me. And I made mistakes in therapy that Dan laid out, I talked about, that probably need to be, I need to go back.
I think when you look at someone like looking at Danley or Hudson, and you're like peers, and your peer is saying, yeah, I'm going to therapy, I'm doing that, I like to think it, like, other people start looking up to you and they're like, damn, they're trying to make themselves better. And I think that's something that through the Army or whatever career system, you know, be vulnerable and be open that, yeah, I'm doing it. And I mean, it might affect your job in whatever way, but it's going to take people standing out and saying, hey, I'm making a difference for myself. And other individuals need to start doing it for themselves as well. Because, I mean, let's say in your field, like you were just saying, it has an effect on your job. And that goes into the military too. When you have, you know, at home shit problems, you're not fully there, capable of doing your job. Like for me as a, you know, like if I was a team leader and I'm running my team and my head's not, we're deployed or in training environment, my head's not there. I'm not there for my soldiers. Like I could put them at risk. I could, you know, like all sorts of scenarios in that case, you know. And do you want it? Does the Army want that, right? Like, or does the police force want that? And that can go into any career field. Do you want your individuals where they're not there to do their job, and be in a whole different realm or something, or, you know, make things worse? I kind of rambling, but yeah.
No, absolutely. So one of the key pivotal issues with civilian law enforcement, at least in my agency, is that when we go to a critical event, and that be anything that's normally pretty trauma enforcing, right? That be children hurt or killed inside of a car accident, or, you know, someone burned alive or whatever. When you go to these debriefs, what they do is they pull everyone that responded to it into a room.
I remember this
and
conversation.
I think that is the fucking worst possible decision. Because what you have is, like, you know, whoever's the big voice in the room, they might start making jokes about what occurred, you know, moments after, an hour after, and they're like, well, fucking, if you'd only wore a seatbelt, or whatever the fuck, you know, whatever they have to say. And then what you do is you form this tribal response of, like, I'm good, this is funny, I'm good, this is funny. And, like, everyone does it, But there's no way that I'm the only guy coming home at the end of that and being like, fuck that. Today sucked. That's not okay. Like what's happening in my head now is not okay. And now I'm processing it alone when I did have a professional in the room at that time. But everyone's so caught up in the mentality of being, nope, I'm fucking impenetrable. I'm golden. I don't need to talk about this. It didn't affect me because I'm above it.
Yeah.
And I think that bleeds in the military a lot, and there's probably a lot of other civilian entities that work in that same way.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable to be vulnerable, especially as a man. It's okay if a female cop faints on scene, or if she has an issue, or she cries in her patrol vehicle. See a fucking dude doing that? Bro.
Oh, yeah.
You're not cut from
We're
the cloth,
judged
pussy.
instantly.
Yeah, you're not cut from the cloth. Get the fuck out. Same thing in the Army. You're not cut for it. Get out.
So we have a new person. Ski, are you there?
Welcome.
Hey,
Welcome.
That's Swiderski,
Welcome, man.
Nixon.
Ski?
Ski.
Damn, son, what's good with you?
What's going on?
Yo,
No, you were-
congrats on life, man. Congrats on
Right.
everything. On everything.
Thank you. But you were 100% right, especially with the tribal mentality. You'll see it in briefings all the time. Like you were saying, that the biggest voice in the room, everyone will band around what that guy says, regardless if it's good or bad,
Facts.
just because they're trying to get better with him, because they control their promotion, their life in the military,
Facts.
and you see it every day.
So, Beachy, you asked a question about how do you get these dudes to like see it, is the way that I'm taking that question. You know what I mean? Like your buddy specifically. And it's, for me, it's always been, you have to show them, like it's what I did with you. It's what I did with Hudson. It's what I did with Sanchez. It's, you got to sell it to them. Like, what did you learn? Like, make it marketable.
Yeah, that's fair.
Make it marketable to them. Be like, look, this is what I was doing, and this is what I'm doing now. And this was the problem that I was having, and this is how I'm solving it now. And especially when you come from a childhood like that, because I have a childhood. I have a childhood very similar to that, right? My parents were drug addicts. My dad's been in prison since I was a kid. Whoop de whoop yada yada. And then I thought that I was dealing with it or whatever, right? Like it didn't affect me. And then as I got older, and as me and my wife were like talking and shit, she was like, "You're not mad at me. You're mad at your mom." And I'm like 30 at the time when she said this shit to me. And I was like, what? Fuck you. I'm mad at you. You did this. And then she's like, no, I didn't. Yeah, she's like, because I was like, so I was doing like some writing or whatever. It was like when I first started school, and I thought I had some cool shit to say or whatever. And then I had her read it, and she was like, it's good. That's what she said. She said, it's good. And I looked at her and I was like, bitch, fuck you. You hate it. And she was like, what? Like,
I've done the same thing.
Preach.
And she's like, but my words were this. So this is something that me and Sanchez talked about recently. And when you're talking about frequencies, right, you have just like that squiggly line that dictates the frequency, right? So you have a reference signal, right, the nominal, like the perfect signal, and then you have a second signal that you're trying to adjust. And if it's shifted to the right or the left, it's out of phase. And that term just means time. It's just related to time. Right. So in this instance, when I'm talking to my wife, right, I'm interpreting or inferring or projecting something into the future about her intent. And I'm not reading the reference signal that's in front of me by it's good. Right. Like I'm adding more information there than exists. And that's kind of the point that I was trying to make earlier. And then with your friends, when you see them doing that shit, you got to call them out. You know what I'm saying? You got to be like, bro, you're projecting right now. You need to relax. Like, you need to chill. And then also, I mean, CBT is like a great therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy. And it works with the cognition, the cognitive distortions that we develop because of traumatic experiences or the habituation, like where you're thinking that you have to create a route plan to the gym every day. You know what I'm saying? And most people who are listening to this, right, like are either dudes that are in the Army with or the dudes that I went to high school with. You know what I'm saying? So they don't know that you used to protect. Can I say what you used to do?
Sure.
That you used to like protect the sec def and shit. You know what I mean? You've met Mattis and Gates and somebody else. So like when you're doing that kind of a job, your job is to fear civilians, like average Americans. That's your job because it's your responsibility. You know what I mean? So then once you come off shift or whatever, that doesn't just turn off. And as an infantryman, when you go to war a bunch of times, or when you get training to go to war a bunch of times, you can't just turn it off. You know what I mean? Like, I remember growing up in the Army, and me and Nixon and Ski here, we were all privates at the same time, right? That's how old we all are. And I remember the dudes that like were raising us in the Army, they would tell us shit that we are going to be the reason that somebody dies. If you fuck this up, you're the reason somebody dies. Like, you're going to get somebody killed. And then that just creates this fucking fear in you where, like, you're
afraid to fuck up.
Yeah, every choice you make, like, you don't want to make any mistakes. So then when you get called out, like in a relationship, like when I get called out for my mistakes, I fight tooth and nail to prove to her that I was not wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like,
100%.
Or when you fuck up and you get caught and somebody's lecturing you, I guess, you think that it's worst case scenario, you know?
Yeah.
Like you said, somebody's gonna fucking die because I did this, and you beat yourself up super fucking. I know when I get in arguments with my wife, that's my best friend, man. That's my homie, man. If we hit bedtime, bro, and she's still mad at me, bro, I'm fucking crying that night. Because she's not talking to me, she's not fucking looking at me, she's mad. I got my son, you know, like, she's in a bad mood. I'm over here trying to take care of my son. I'm like, fuck, man. Like,
I find that to be the response, and also to like be a grudge holder. Be like, no, I wasn't wrong. You were fucking wrong. And then wait for them to like come back and apologize or some shit. But it's like, you could take the high road and just fucking, you know what I mean? Which is funny because in my professional environments, when I fuck up in a professional environment, I want to go and like immediately apologize. Immediately be like, hey, my bad. Like, I fucked up. Like, that was totally me. These are the policies I violated. This is all the issues. I recently got into a pretty bad collision at work. I fucking rolled my patrol vehicle. That fucking sucked. But nevertheless, right? So I don't think I was 100% at fault for what occurred. I won't go balls deep into what happened, but nevertheless, I am at fault because of due regard. And I tried to like immediately go to my chief, immediately go to my command team and be like, this is what I fucked up. These are all the violations I've done. This is the end-all be-all of everything wrong. I'm fucking beating the shit out of myself the entire time explaining this to you. I'm getting emotional about it because I feel the
attachment.
Sure, like the obligation to be the right answer. I am the solution. I'm not another pawn on the field here. I am the solution this organization needs. And now they view me in a different light, or that's my fear, right? Because now they view me as incompetent. So I tried to get out ahead of it, and it resulted in an internal investigation. I have my clothes out this week, thank God. But like, nevertheless, I'm just gonna get my dick slapped, right, over the whole situation.
You don't want to go too far into what happened during the war?
I mean, I can.
I feel like it would be useful, especially considering how this topic started.
Right, and so there's some issues.
You
with
sure
it.
You can, man? I mean, you don't got to say anything if you don't.
No. So it's not a detrimental story.
Live, so.
You feel me? Like, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually. I can go into like the light minutia of it, right? So there was a plane crash over the scanner. That's all we heard. That a plane just went down on this highway. I'm en route to it, right? We have no idea where it is. I get behind this slow-moving traffic in a two-lane road, right? So it's just got the single or the double yellow solid stripes down the middle.
Okay.
And I see I look around the vehicles and I can see that it's like fucking there's no southbound traffic. And I'm like, dude, I'm good. So I kick on my lights to my patrol vehicle because I'm attempting to locate ATLing down this road, right? And I'm like, if I can just get around the slow-moving traffic, I can fucking make progress because it's somewhere north of me that this occurred. Kick on my lights, start blipping my siren, fucking letting the vehicles know I'm a cop. Vehicle one, the immediate in front of me, there's 3 vehicles in front of me, fucking starts at brake lights, merging right. Alright, I'm good. So now I'm cutting between that southbound, northbound lane. Vehicle 2 acknowledges me, I see tail lights, cuts right. I start to fucking accelerate, bro. I don't, yeah. Well, the front vehicle, I see taillights come on, and I'm like, nah, he's acknowledging me. Homeboy just make to left. No turn signal, nothing. So he just, cuts left to turn into a neighborhood, and I just fucking impact imminent, try to mitigate, dude. I turn into him, right? Turn away from him, like we're gonna make the same movement. But instead, I just fucking, bam, dude. So when I hit him, my front right tire seared off, and I began to roll my truck. but I made mistakes in that too, right? Per law enforcement, right? We have due regard. So what that means is like, I feel like I had no logical reason to believe that out of 3 vehicles, 2 acknowledge me with brake lights that they're merging right. The 3rd vehicle acknowledges me. What I took is brake light illumination is going to move right, took a left. I don't think I had any reason to believe my license sirens weren't working at the time. However, I should have been more cautious per the law enforcement side of the house, right? Is that I shouldn't have been accelerating to the point I was. My speed was way too unreasonable. I totally agree with that. I wasn't wearing a fucking seatbelt, so I went humbling through this vehicle, dude. I got the shit kicked out of me. Yeah, it sucked. I got a pretty bad concussion out of it, but there's funny shit that happened with that too. Like 2 days later, I tried to go to Walmart, and I brought my TV remote instead of my phone and wallet. Like, I was just doing real concussion-y things, dude.
That's not good.
I ended up having conversations with Danley that I have no recollection of. I had entire memory blackouts occurring. So wear your seatbelt is the lesson learned, more or less. And,
police officer.
Yeah, no shit. Fun fact, most law enforcement in America do not wear their seatbelts.
Interesting.
Most shit. Don't. Most do not.
I fucking knew it.
Bro, that's the
You're
most
taught it.
interesting shit I've learned the past 2
You're
fucking weeks, bro.
taught it. So, like, in most law enforcement settings that I've been in, I've been taught, do not wear your seatbelt. Do not. Because what it does is it restricts you into your vehicle. Ergo, if you're getting ambushed, you can't get out. Right? That if I roll up on scene and I can't get out fast enough because I was seatbelted in, I just fucked myself and possibly my partner who was like getting his dick kicked in by somebody on the sidewalk or something. Right? Yeah. So they teach in the academy, like, wear your seatbelt, but then that instructor's like, this is what I was supposed to teach him. Don't worry. Don't fucking. You don't need it. Right? These law enforcement collisions are rare. They're rare, but when they happen, they're always fucking bad. I've never seen one that was like, oh yeah, he just rear-ended me. It's all good. No, that dude was doing mock Jesus and wrapped himself around a telephone pole, right? Like, it's never simple, dude.
Yeah.
And half of those cops, I've never seen a law enforcement collision that they're wearing their seatbelt. I've never seen that. I know that it's probably occurred, but there's all these thought processes that occur with law enforcement, that there's an accountability line and there's also your leadership accountability line. And it happens in the military a lot too, that the regulation says this. However, we're not doing PRT. Fuck that shit. Right? Says we're supposed to, but absolutely not. Stretch on your own. Right? And that's a bad example, but we do it all the time. We do it all the fucking time.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I think the military is also a great place to build good habits. Especially as a fucking leader, you should be encouraging your soldiers to build good habits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's also a place where a lot of bad habits are formed.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, absolutely.
Well, you start to process information at different frequencies, I think. So I know that we probably all have similar stories to our first leadership in the Army. All I got was getting like the shit smoked out of me for fucking everything. Like, wasn't allowed to walk. Had to like iron Mike everywhere through the company area. Late on that when you were brand new private. You had to put your feet on the desk to talk to anyone that outranked you. Like shit like that. Like, so for me, immediately my knee jerk was like, this place is hell. Fuck all these people. And then you start to develop this confidence. The one lesson that I learned from all that was that you're not allowed to hold grudges. So like, I would get this shit smoked out of me by my team leader, and then be like, "What do you want for lunch, bro?" I'm like, "Fuck, I don't want to go to lunch with you. Like, you just beat the shit out of me in the motor pool." But then if I'm like, "Nah, dude, I'm gonna eat in the barracks," he'd be like, "Fuck you, pussy! Like, we're going to McDonald's. Get in the truck," you know. And like, you learn that there's no grudges to be held on corrective action.
I think civilians have a problem with that. I think a lot I think a lot of civilians have a problem with that. I feel like that's one of the differences between us and them.
Dude,
like, you can't.
Everything's personal.
Yeah, you can't just say
everything is personal.
You can't just say you suck at your fucking job. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just say that anymore, or at least out here.
It's gotten to the point where so I was talking to behavioral health. What was it, like 2-3 days ago? And because I was cussing in her office because she got me frustrated, I said one thing, and that's what she dove in on that thing, and that was what was going on, and that was what was causing everything else. And because I got frustrated, and being an 11 Bravo, I'm more prone to cursing than I probably should be. And because I started cursing, she immediately took it personal, and that I was being rude and confrontational, and like the session end, and then I got a call from like the provider like 2 days later, like, "Hey, you need to not do shit like that." Like,
But I think,
Sucks.
I mean, it's therapy, right? So,
yeah,
I mean,
Should be
I've
safe.
like you should be like as long as you're. I mean, that, like they've always said, like as long as you're not going to hurt yourself or others, you're like golden, right? You got the green light. Like I mean, I'm obviously most people go into therapy kind of tiptoeing around, walking on eggshells because you don't really know what to say or not to say. And I mean, I've asked in my therapy session, may I cuss? Because like that's what I do, and I'll slip and I go, oh, I apologize for saying that. And I think finding the right therapist. That just sounds like your therapist was.
Yeah, it sounds like you got to get another therapist.
yeah, no,
it
and that's
sounds like
exactly
Sounds
what's
like
happening.
you're supposed to be
I
able
heard
to
you
fucking-
say.
It's supposed to be a safe space. You know what I'm saying? Like you're
Yeah.
supposed to talk how you want to talk. Like, you know, and
Which
and,
is-
if something that you're saying, you get a little hostile. They shouldn't get nervous. It's just you're just
Yeah.
passionate about what you're saying.
But
I'm
even at
curious,
that, so
too.
I know. Go ahead, Sanchez.
Sorry, just a real quick question. I'm curious too, because I heard you say behavioral health. Is this somebody you saw? Are you active duty still?
I am.
Okay, so here's the big difference, guys. Notice,
Ooh.
because
Right.
everybody else here who's seen has everybody else here seen a provider inside or outside of the army, or is everybody here gone to therapy
Oh, yes.
outside?
Outside.
I've done both.
Outside.
Outside.
I did
Now,
both.
so-
Stanley, since you have a perspective of both, can you kind of add on to that, like the differences between both of them?
You have to protect yourself when you're inside still. There's things you can't say and there's ways that you can't be, especially being how many deployments you got now, Ski?
36 months total.
Yeah. So with 3 deployments, they see your record basically. They look at that. It's on your ERB. You know what I mean? So if you have certain trainings and you have certain whatevers, that's what they're going to look at. Because what they're really looking for is for you to be a domestic violence person. They're looking. It's almost like they're trying to catch you sometimes, if that makes sense. But
Yeah, no, it's kind of how I felt because I started getting frustrated. Like I hadn't done that shit. Now I got mad. Like I was getting accused of some shit I hadn't done, and it didn't make sense to me. And I started getting mad.
yeah. So
That's super unfortunate if that's how that is held.
So I know
Because
that. Like,
because right there, that's a immediate turnoff for any individual that's
Oh, yeah.
trying to seek help, but then it's being basically turned away for his actions. Which I mean, I get it. Like, there's a certain point where I mean, if I was to be throwing stuff around the room, like obviously, yeah, no, that's not good. But like,
I
you should
said
be
fuck
able to
3 times.
Yeah, you should
Okay.
be able to have emotion, and then obviously that's a trigger for them to be like, "Yep, all right, this is something that's emotional or whatever. Like, how do we work through this?" Not
well, that's
put up a shield and be like, "Get out."
I think
This
that's
is the first time I've approached behavioral health in my career, and this is how I was met. And y'all are fucking honest. I don't want to go back. Like it didn't make
No.
sense. I got
I don't
frustrated,
blame
then I
you,
got
bro. I don't.
I got
Yeah, of
talked to
course.
by
I
an
would-
officer I had met like fucking twice. Told I needed to be better.
Can
needed
you ask
control
to go
myself
out?
more.
Can you go
That's
out on the
unfortunate.
economy?
I have to get a referral, and currently the waiting time for an appointment is 1 month out, and they only see one issue at a time.
Jesus.
So that's with the provider to get a referral to go see someone else.
That's interesting.
And this is why the military, yeah,
that's
Well,
awesome.
you have to understand where they're coming from because they want to keep everything in house, right? So they want to make sure that you're not going to kill yourself and you're not going to kill
Yep.
somebody else, and you're not beating your wife or you're not beating your kids. That's their
all that matters.
main priority, right? So the problem, I think, and it's the same problem that you brought up earlier about the Army, like strategic, organizational, and a direct level. At a strategic level, nobody really knows what to do with mental health. No one.
No.
There's not a clear doctrine. Like there's a split between Freud and Jung. Freud is more of like the negative aspects of our humanity and like what's wrong with people, and Jung starts to go towards like what is the nominal, like what's the optimal human. And there's 2 different types of counseling theories, and I'm gonna fucking butcher them, but they have different models within them. And then when you're going to therapy, there's 2 different theories, so it depends on which counselor you get, which theory that they are practicing or practitioners of. So when I'm saying like when you're going to therapy, you need to bring ammo with you, it's like, what do you want out of the therapy? What's the problem that you're going to therapy for? And there's certain types of therapy that are better suited for that. In ski, I don't expect you to say what the problem is, but if you want to, I'm all ears. But like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is probably the most prevalent one, and it's the one that most people should go to. And I'm of the belief that every single human needs to go to therapy. I think therapy needs to be a part
100%.
of needs to be a part of like the public school system, and like
Yeah.
a part of teachers needs to be this communication style of therapy, of like understanding this stuff, because you know, historically speaking, when the Louisiana Purchase is not fucking important. It's these kids who are growing up in households where their parents beat the fuck out of them, or their mom's on heroin and shit. Like, how do you help that kid not become that when they're older is more of my idea. And then in the Army, as far as like with what you're dealing with, Ski, it's I know some things from our past. I don't know if it's the same type of stuff, if it's relationship oriented or it's anger or whatever, but there's certain therapies that are very specific to those things. And if we want to talk offline, when you go to behavioral health, you can be like, this is what I need and this is what I want, you know what I mean? And you tell them what it is that you want. And then when, I don't know if you were saying fuck or you got frustrated because she triggered some response within you that you weren't ready to see yet, because I've never had a therapist tell me anything I didn't know. They just told me things I was not willing to admit to myself, if that makes sense.
Oof.
And
It was more like we were having a conversation. I don't want to share everything, but we were having a conversation, and she asked like what has gone on in this period of time, and I was like, okay, well, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and out of that 4 she picked 1, and that was it. That was everything, every reason why. And it was like, that was the smallest, like, that it didn't matter. That was like, it was the birth of my fucking son. I was like, why would that make me angry? Why would that upset me? I now have he's, the 1st of July was his first birthday.
nice.
Right? And it was like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Congrats.
Like, I love this tiny little dude. That he doesn't make me angry. Everything he does is fantastic. Like, I think it's all hilarious.
Yeah.
Right? And she just kept digging in on it, and it was just like, I can't do it anymore. Like, this is not that fucking issue.
Did you get angry when she started to dig because she was digging and you thought it wasn't the thing?
Yeah,
Then why did you get angry?
because it wasn't the issue.
But that's
That's what I thought anyway. It's like the birth of my son would not make me angry. Like
well, I feel you. But trust me,
Yeah.
I feel you. But my point is, let me say it a different way, right? What if you were to question me about something that I'm trying to figure out why I'm upset, right? And then you pick one thing, and then you start digging at it, and the more you dig at it, the more angry I'm getting.
it makes me believe that's the issue.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah, no, I understand.
if it didn't make you angry, maybe she wouldn't have got stuck on it. So maybe this is more of like an exercise on emotional regulation, which most men have a problem with, where like it's hard to pinpoint our emotions, so it automatically goes to anger. Like frustrated, you could be.
I'll caveat on that, right? So I just finished being a drill sergeant, so like it's
Ooh.
dug into us at like everything. Like, dudes' bootlaces aren't tied the right way. Everything's got to be like world-ending issue.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I've been finding myself like small stuff, like, I don't know, I'm in Walmart and someone's just walking slow, I'll get infuriated, like start losing my
Preach.
shit, like start sweating and like losing my mind, like I gotta get the fuck out of here. Like I don't go shopping with my wife. I don't like doing it anymore because I can't deal with the people. Like, it's just I fucking hate everybody because they don't do anything right. They don't do anything in it. They're all slow. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it drives me nuts.
So for me, I used to be the same way. I mean, you remember me.
Yeah.
But the thing I feel like that I learned that was the most practical that I can use from that was, there's only 2 things in life that you can control. And I mean control, like I have direct influence of. And that's my actions and my reactions. And other people do not fall into that. Now, in the world of the Army, if I say something, you jump, right? That doesn't mean I actually have control. We're both bought into this idea of what the Army is. So they're just following the same rules that I'm following. You know what I mean? And once I've like delineated that, or like delineated, however the fuck you want to pronounce it, of like what I'm in control of versus what I have no control of, it has helped me with my like emotional responses to anger to things. And that's something that they teach in, it's not, maybe it's not so much teach, but it's something that you'll do in like CBT therapy and a lot of anger management therapy. They may not say it in that way, but they will frame things as what you have control over versus what you don't. So then why are you getting upset about it, type of shit, you know what I mean? So this is where the legwork comes in, right? The shadow work, where like you have I know me, Hudson, and BiT and Sanchez has talked about this, where you have this observer in your head, you know what I mean? Like you have thoughts. You are not your thoughts, right? You have emotions. You are not your emotions. You are the thing that is aware of them. So like the first step is becoming aware of whatever it is that you're feeling, and then trying to figure out why you're feeling it. So what is it that is, so I said this earlier in the podcast, and I don't know if you heard it. Everything that your brain, everything that you don't have a direct connection to reality. Everything is mediated through your senses. So therefore, you live in basically a black hole. And what we're doing every day is we're reading data on the inside of the black hole, right? Like ones and zeros. So what does this mean? What does it mean? Why is this? What does this mean? So when somebody, for instance, doesn't fucking tie their boots the right way, you're reading it as something that triggers anger. And the question is whether or not it should be triggering anger, and why is it? And that's like some internal shit that you have to go through. I mean, we can talk about it too, but
I'm just using that as an example. I didn't actually get mad at someone, boot laces wrong. But as a drill sergeant, like someone's not standing the right way in formation, right? The idea, everyone here, I'm assuming, went through basic training, right? They experienced what a drill sergeant reacts to and how they reacted to pretty much everything, especially when you first started out in basic training. And that, for 2.5 years is what I existed. And now I'm trying to have to learn how to go back to what I used to and not be as like jump on everything, because that's what I've done for the last 2.5 years, and it's got to be like over the top, like this person has to know so they'll never do it again. That way when they get to their unit, it's not a fucking problem.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Right. Ski, can I ask it through behavioral health with the Army, do they time lock it so you only have an hour?
So I would think we talked for about 30 minutes before we ended up separating.
Okay. So I know that, like, with the civilian side of it, when I went to therapy, one of the most frustrating things to me is that it was $80 an hour, not covered by insurance.
Yeah, hell no.
$80 out of my fucking pocket. And when she would get fixated on something that I didn't think was an issue, I got fucking mad about it. Because I was like, you're literally wasting my money. Because at the end of that hour, a little alarm on her desk would go off, and she'd be like, well, do you want to continue to talk about this? It'll be an extra $80. And I'm like, this is so fucking transactional that it's eating my soul. Like, yeah. I got very frustrated with that. There's some other elements.
At work.
What's that?
Capitalism at work.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, okay, well, I'm buying a service. And so I had additional frustrations come from that I've talked to Danley about too. So one thing that drove me crazy is that when I brought up these intrusive thoughts to her, she responded with, well, I'll have to consult my cohort. So I was like, so you're not even qualified to be talking to me. We know the same amount of shit if you have to go and talk to somebody else. So we have a fucking therapy chain of command that you have to jump up through? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And then about 2 months into those sessions, she started to, instead of calling me sir or no acknowledgement of that, she started calling me by my first name. She started saying, well, I'm sorry you went through that. She started feeling like a friend, and it fucking drove me crazy to the point that I no longer went to therapy. I was like, this is fucking bullshit. Like, I'm not paying for a friend. Like, I lost my shit about it and haven't gone back. But to circle back to my collision, Danley and I were kind of talking about that a little bit, that one of the things that occurred during that collision that was really interesting is that everyone's probably been in a situation similar where time seems to slow down, your adrenaline dump. I remember everything about the vehicle rolling, every single little fucking bit that was occurring inside that cab. So I remember watching my handcuff pouch on my vest get caught on my steering wheel and hold me to the seat. I remember like putting my arm above my head to brace. And as the vehicle cocked to its side, I watched my windshield spiderweb and start to like crush, dude. And I remember when that was happening, my thought was like, I'm finally dying. This is it. Thank you. Like, I was very much so like in the mindset of like, it's over. This is what this feels like to die. And Danley actually called me just a few days after that, and it was the first time I'd said it out loud. And I mean, best time in the world for anyone to call you, because I was just going through it. I was on a long drive back home, and it was really good timing for that. And in that conversation, I was like, I need to go back to therapy. But then when I have these thoughts about how that therapy went, I'm highly deterred from it. And when I bring it up to other friends that don't believe in therapy, like, fuck that, never go back there. That's a waste of fucking money. It becomes a difficult argument of like, well, do I just seek a different therapist now? Because I can't find any that accept insurance where I live.
Yeah,
No TRICARE, no law enforcement insurance. And then I had to lie in therapy to an extent. I had to mitigate so many of my own thoughts. Because if I say, hi, I have suicidal thoughts, they take my badge and my gun right then and there.
Oh, immediately.
Right then and there. I'm done working. So it's like, fuck, man. So thankfully, I learned phrases to be able to talk about that kind of shit that Danley and I have talked about on the podcast. But it became this horrible argument within like, well, this is what I need to be saying to get the help that I need. However, I have to play fucking verbal judo in this therapist's room to be like, well, I mean, like, once upon a time I thought about that. And it's like, little does she know, it was on my drive here. Like, you know what I mean? So it becomes very difficult to...
No, and that it's 100% like that, and especially in the military. If you say the wrong thing, they're going to knee-jerk reaction and make it the worst possible outcome it could be.
Yes.
And it's like, that's not even really what I meant.
No.
And like Danley was saying earlier, you have to protect yourself, and you have to say things in a certain way. And I'm not great at that. I've never been great at that.
Because well, you feel safe for that moment, but then you remember, like, all of us have dealt with privates on suicide watch. We fucking hate them. Like, it's not okay. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that guy that you have to stay awake with. Like, we all fucking despise that dude. And that's a stigma that's got to die, dude. Like, because a lot of those people were going through, like, some real shit, and you're sitting at the edge of their bed like, I fucking hate you so much. Like, I have to be awake here. I had to take your fucking bootlaces. I had to do all this shit to prevent this. I'm losing my
pulling guard on you when I could be sleeping.
Yeah, you suck, bro. Like, you're a buddy fucker. Like, you put everyone in this unit at, like, we didn't have fire guard tonight, but now we have to fucking watch you in the barracks. You know, so it generates a repercussional thought for something that should be seeking help. Now there goes the guilt line again. There goes all these negative portions of fucking going to behavioral health and active duty. You get held accountable on just self-help.
You were correct. And in the military, it's a... I'm sure Danley and everyone else can attest to this, that if you went to sick call, you were a problem. Like people abuse the system. They will go there to get out of stuff, and then when you go there for a legitimate issue, it's just 7 more days. Yeah, let it go. Let it ride for 7 days. It's still got an issue. Come back again, and then maybe they'll do some stuff, and then so on and so forth. And it's a long, drawn out process because so many people abuse the system, and then because everyone above you is like, you're a turd if you go, you're a piece of shit, so on and so forth, and it's frowned upon. You become a black sheep.
I do not miss that mentality, and I think we need, as leaders in the military, I think if you do have an issue, I mean, yeah, you'll have a private or whatever say he's, milking a leg issue or whatever, but when it's your time and you're like, oh, I'm worried that, chain of command, but the chain of command, a month from now, it's not going to remember that you went to sick call because, you rolled your ankle or whatever it is,
Right.
I think you should be able to, I think, explain that to your soldiers and stuff like that, because, I mean, that's unfair in a lot of ways. And I mean, I know I did it. I never went. Like, it was
Hell
like,
no.
oh, hell no, I'm not going. And now it's like, well, I probably should have done something about that, got that checked out and stuff like that. Hudson, your conversation about your therapist becoming your friend. So my therapist, right off the bat, wanted to build that personal relationship. So obviously, like me as a vet that's been in combat, she wanted to relate to me. So she started talking about her father. Like, I guess she has a bunch of family members that were in the military and stuff like that. And then as a therapist, obviously she's learned with them and stuff. So she tries to relate to me in that way. And I know that's like, for me, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, you know. But at the same time, it's like, would you rather be like sir or ma'am, or like kind of you building this relationship just like us is where you feel almost more open to talk to that person. You don't want to feel like you're walking on eggshells in a way. Because I felt like we were building like kind of a rapport. Now I can't really go back because of changing VAs or whatever. But
right. So what it did for me is it
I
identified further issues, right? And Dan and I talked about that too, is that it's like, okay, well now you're afraid of friends, you're afraid of that trust network.
Yeah.
Hey, what's wrong with this lady being nice to you, bro?
Right. And I held it like super personally and had a huge issue with it. Because I was like, okay, no, if this is going to be transactional, it needs to be transactional. I am paying you for a service, you render the service, we go away. And that's like identifiably the wrong process to approach therapy with.
Yeah.
So if someone listening to this is planning on going to therapy and she starts to be nice to you, let someone be nice to you.
Yeah. 100%.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay for someone to care. But it's also okay for that person not to be the end-all, be-all subject matter expert of what's occurring. Mm-hmm. I know that for me, like where I live in a real dinky small town, so most of our therapists are like marriage counselors and fucking school counselors. So the person I was going to was primarily a marriage counselor. And then I'm coming in there like, hi, I have fucking issues from military service and law enforcement. And she's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I'm usually like, she won't fuck me, bro. Like, you know what I mean? So it was a way harder line for her to be crossing. And instead of the patient's side of you coming out and being like, okay, well, let her consult the cohort. Let's see what she can return with.
I do see the frustration now going to therapy, because you'll start getting on a subject and then, you know, it takes a minute because you're like greeting each other, whatever, getting into the nitty gritty, or like just talking, and then you start getting into the nitty gritty, and then once you like, it's like, oh, it's time to go, and then you're like, what? We just started here,
we didn't do
and
shit.
Then you go and restart that whole thing, but you might not pick up where you left off, and you're like, but I still want to work on that, and then she might not. I guess you have to be flexible and try to take advantage of therapy as much as you can. But you're not going to always be able to like go in depth. And I recommend someone that's going through something very traumatic or anything like that to try to see if you can go to therapy twice a week. So then, you know, it's still fresh, because I had that opportunity, but I was like, oh, you know, my schedule won't. And now my schedule lightened up, and I was like, man, I want to continue to talk to you. Like I don't, and I mean, right now I'm not able to, but yeah, I think, but yeah, paying it out of pocket is very frustrating.
It is. And so one of the coupling thought processes that came with that as well is my first therapy session is really the only one I can remember, because I was like, this is beyond fucking awkward and I don't know how to start. I do not know how to start. And I don't know if that more falls on me or my therapist for that regard.
I think that's your therapist, man.
So I didn't know how to jump off that road at all. So I sat down, we did our introductions. She said, my name is. I said, my name is. And then we sat.
That's on you, bro. That's on you. That ain't on her.
Right. And then so she was like, so what's on your mind today?
Like, why the fuck are you there? This is the problem. Yeah. No, this is literally the problem, is that we can't be honest with ourselves. So what the fuck do we expect to be able to be honest with a goddamn therapist?
Correct.
Like, it's on us to be able to voice these things, like, and this goes back to the original problem of like emotional intelligence, of recognizing what it is that I'm feeling and then being able to express it into the world. Like, I can feel it, but how do I say it to somebody? You know what I mean?
Well, even being able to acknowledge that emotional line. So I have a serious problem with acknowledging my current headspace. Other people see it and be like, you all right? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And meanwhile, my brain's doing fucking laps. So in therapy, I felt the need to rush. I was like, I paid for an hour. I only have a fucking hour. I've got 60 minutes. I just wasted 15 minutes on fucking introductions. And I didn't know what to say for fucking 15 minutes. And then I'm like, hi, I want to fucking kill myself. And I'm like, I just fucking go down this line with her. And then she's like, well, do you want to pay another $80. I'm like, no, I'm gonna go to the gym. And like, I would leave that building and be like, what the fuck just happened? Like,
well, I wanna make some things clear real quick. So the therapy that you guys are just talking about right now is talk therapy, and that's usually the first couple sessions of therapy until they determine what it is that you need. Like what metric they're trying to like work against. Is it grief? Is it survivor's guilt? Is it PTSD? Is it, what is it? So if you go in there and you don't even know what the fucking problem is and you just say fix me, which is basically what you guys are expecting when you go in like this, they ain't gonna do shit. They can't do shit. Like I don't know what the fuck problem you're having unless you tell me, and we tell our privates that. You know what I mean?
And
wine is the only thing that gets better with age, right? Problems don't.
And then as those sessions progressed, I took like a little test, and she was like, "Congratulations, you have PTSD." And I was like, "What the fuck now?" Like the session ended after that test. She was like, "Well, we can either talk about your results and everything, or you would have to pay." And I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" So I think I just went to a really bad initial knee jerk.
So I went to a military therapist. It was an Air Force one, right? So it was through Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, right? And when I went in there, like, you know those questionnaire shits that we all know and love. I finally put yes. God. I finally put yes to some shit. You know what I mean? Because I was like,
yeah, I've done that.
So, because me and my wife, she was about to leave again, and then fucking she telling me all this shit. And I'm fucking throwing fits at my kids, and you know what I mean? I'm just being a fucking turd. And I was like, I need help. Like, I'm obviously not capable of controlling myself or whatever the fuck is going on with me right now. I can't really put my finger on it, but I know that if it keeps going this way, I'm going to get sad. And when I start to get sad, there's a thought that permeates that sadness, which is I could always just fucking off myself and I would no longer be a problem for anybody because I'm the reason that everything is shit. And that thought pattern, I feel like in law enforcement, in the military, especially combat arms, is because the reason that we have those thoughts for me is because that's the answer to all of our problems, right? Like we literally train to kill people. So that's my solution to problems. So if I'm a problem, it's not that far of a stretch to just kill myself and then there's no longer a fucking problem. And I think the issue that we're having or that we're seeing as far as like the way that active duty treats EBH or embedded behavioral health or mental health at all is because nobody's being honest. There's not a single, if every one of us was like, the statement that I had made to Hudson before was, I don't want to kill myself right now, but I don't know about tomorrow. Like I don't know if I can say that about tomorrow. But right now, no, I don't want to die. But I don't, if things don't get better, I can't make that promise, right? So when I was in that headspace, I went to a therapy called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization repolarization, some shit like that. And this lady had like a light bar and you're supposed to like watch it and go back and forth and then you talk or whatever, kind of. So the first thing she does is separates your life into a timeline of like 0 to 3, 3 to 8, 8 to 13, 13 to 18, and then adult military, and then adult civilian. And then inside of this this x-axis, she asks qualifying questions, you know, the why, of like, did you experience this? Did anybody ever try to kill you? Were you ever in a natural disaster? A bunch of stuff that would basically show that you have PTSD, and then based on the ages that you were in. And then she would ask you, how much does this affect you in your everyday life? And the problem is that I don't fucking know, right? Like, yeah, my stepdad tried to drown me when I was 3, but I don't think about it all the time, right? But if I was really to think about it, maybe that's why I don't like playing with motherfuckers in the pool. When people touch me, I freak the fuck out. You know what I mean? So maybe, but that doesn't really bother me all the time. So you put like a numerical value to them, like 1 through 10, right? So you also put a name to them, right? So that one I just said specifically, I didn't even tell her what it was. I just said bathtub, right? So if she said it, I could know what it was. There's another one where like the neighbors used to find me in the front yard and feed me cereal, and I would be like naked and shit, and I was like 3 or 4, and my mom or my dad or whatever would be like doped out in the house. So I just said cereal for that, but I didn't have to tell her any of that qualifying information about what the event was, right? Because a lot of the problem when you're going to therapy is that you get to this point where like you realize you've been lying to yourself. These things aren't really that bad, and some of these aren't even my problems. I'm inheriting these from other people. Like I'm taking on the trauma from this other dude that told me this story that it happened to him, and then low key I'll tell that story to other people like it was mine, right? We all know people that do that, and we've all done that to some degree, right? Because it's just easier to tell the story that way, right? Oh, I know this guy that knew a guy that knew a guy that this happened.
That
right?
erodes your credibility.
Yeah, it was just a story, right? This is a cool thing that I know that happened to somebody. Cool, I'm gonna tell it, and then it is what it is. But when you're in therapy, you start to realize these things like, oh shit, this isn't actually mine. That's not mine, but this one is. So you have X and Y, right? And we've all done map reading. So we know the top right of a graph is positive, positive, and the bottom right of a graph is negative, positive, right? Or positive, negative, sorry. So X is time, Y is quality, right? So the front half of the graph is the future, and the back half of the graph is the past. So that bottom left is going to be negative, negative. So in this EMDR, I have bathtub, fucking cereal, a bunch of other names, and they're all in that bottom left quadrant of this fucking graph. So she'll ask me about one specifically, right? And the cereal one was like the main one that I talk about because it's the easiest, right? It's not I'm not going to cry bringing it up, but she bring out this list of cognitions about the event, right? So you have to think about the event and what does it make you feel? And then you get this list of cognitions. I am worthless, I am powerless, I am this, that, and the other thing. It's all I statements about yourself. So for me, it was I am worthless because my mom didn't give a fuck about me and the person that's supposed to give a fuck about me didn't, so that means I'm worthless, right? So then you chant that self in your head while you're like looking at this light bar, like I am worthless, I am worthless, I am worthless, I am worthless. And then this other voice, right, starts to fight back a little bit. And that's why I recommend most people go to CBT first, is because a lot of this stuff is you're arguing with yourself in your head, right? Your head knows the truth, right? The dude, my echo has been with me my entire life. He knows everything about me. He knows shit that I'm never telling nobody. I'm taking that shit to the grave. And he will pull that shit out to use it against me in my own head, right? That's the shadow work part of this. So when I'm in these conversations with myself, I have to find better ammo, right? I'm worthless because the person that didn't give a fuck about you, or the person that's supposed to give a fuck about you, didn't. Because you're a fucking piece of shit, and whoop-de-whoop, and yada-yada. But then you start to talk to yourself, and you're like, but I was a kid. Like, I'm a baby. That's not my fault. I'm not in control of another person's actions. I'm not in control of this situation in any way, shape, or form. So this isn't my fault, nor is this my responsibility. I'm not taking that on to myself. So this other voice is talking about it. And the only way I've been able to describe it properly is it's still your voice, but it's of opposite sign, right? And there's some like technical shit to this that makes perfect sense, like the physicality of the way noise canceling headphones work, right? You have this headphone on, it has a speaker on the outside and a receiver, or it has a receiver on the outside and a speaker on the inside. So this receiver on the outside is analyzing signals that are coming in, and it's going to match the waveform and project them inward, but it's going to put them of opposite sign, and what it's called is destructive interference, and it makes it go away. So when you're in this conversation with yourself, you have to figure out the positives and the negatives of what it is that you're saying to yourself, right? Like, what is it that I'm actually saying to me? And the hard part is this shit is so like intimate, these conversations that you have with yourself, the truth, right? Like the real you, that you don't show nobody, right? Because you're afraid of the way that people are going to receive it because of some reception that you've had in your past. And normally it goes back to like, you know, your childhood or whatever, but that's the thing that you're fighting. And that signal that you're receiving from your past is so ingrained in you that it's hard to do this. And that's why I feel like therapy is so important, because this thing controls you from the inside, and sometimes you don't even fucking see it, bro. Sorry.
Well, even based on what you're saying, like, there's people that write their like daily affirmations on their mirror in their bathroom and stuff. You know what I mean? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, with the right, you're powerful, you're perfect, you're beautiful, you're whatever. Dude, so like a lot of that is like really beneficial for people. Like that self-positive talk is the byproduct of EMDR at a more powerful level. But I know that even for me, like when I hear that kind of stuff, I get judgy. So I'm only doing that to myself. So like, I've been to calls in people's house, and they have like, "You're beautiful, like you're special, you're a good person," like written on their mirror, and I'm like, "Bitch!" Like immediately like dismissive as fuck over it. And like, I don't bring it up to that person, but I'll bring it up to coworkers, and I'm like, "Well, she's beautiful, you know, like she's so gentle." It's like, yeah, you just beat the shit out of your husband with a fucking beer bottle. Like you suck. But like, nevertheless, like I immediately knee-jerk judgment over that. So that bleeds into when I go to therapy. That bleeds into those environments where I'm like, it reveals something of a vulnerability, a chink in my armor, and now I'm fucking beating the brakes off myself afterwards. Like, why the fuck would you say that out loud? Like, you see how she views you now, huh? And then you paint all these imageries that, like, the way she says hello next time, you're like, oh, she thinks bitch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you fucking build these personas for people that they haven't even remotely conveyed to you based off of your own predisposition of telling yourself that you're not a piece of shit. You build a whole habitual response to someone else saying hi, based off of your own inability to say like good things about yourself.
Because you're projecting it from yourself. Like, so like there's a statement in a lot of the esoteric shit is what we resist persists. And it's also like the more you push this shit into your subconscious, the more you're going to see it in reality. So the statement, like the colloquial statement of what I see in the what irritates me about another is it tells me more about myself than it does about the other person, is the same thing. So you're like basically projecting an overlay of your own bullshit onto everything. And it's like,
well, you see this trending right now, like in a lot of social media, is like kill the part of you that cringes when you see like shitty videos, like when you're like, God damn, like I would never be singing in the middle of Walmart.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. Like that's annoying. It's like, so like that person's pretty free.
So Danley, like you talking about that other voice and the other part of you, right? You're like the first person I've ever heard of talking about the other voice. Right, because I've always had that. I've always dealt with it. I internally overthink everything. Right, never thought about anyone else having that same fucking problem.
Yeah,
because it sounds insane when you try to describe it to someone. Like, do you argue with yourself? Like, so what I started asking coworkers, which probably is the worst, is that when you hear someone ask a question, how many voices answer it? And that's like most people respond 2, 1. Like I don't know, but that anxiety portion of your mind. You know, especially with like the military, you're trying to gain initiative in every problem that can get presented. You have solution networks that are presenting themselves up and down your head. So when you have an internal argument, yeah, you have more than one thing occurring, or some of us do. And that's a tough environment to be able to acknowledge. Because a lot of the times I usually equate that to a passenger mentality, that like some days I'm not even in control. I'm just arguing whoever's controlling me in the moment. All that negative talk and shit and trying to counteract it throughout the entire day.
No, I agree with you. It's wild to think about, and it's wild to try to explain. And then, you know, I don't want to ask someone because then in the military, like everyone's gonna think I'm fucking crazy.
Correct.
Fuck them.
Like it. Yeah, no, you're right. But it's just, you know, I've never heard anyone else, you know, acknowledge that exists.
But you ruin your credibility as an NCO when you bring that shit up in your unit.
Did I?
If you're like,
did I ruin my credibility as an NCO? I don't feel
no,
like I did. I feel
not
like getting drunk on CQ and beating up 3 dudes ruined my credibility as an NCO.
Burn, right?
I remember that shit.
But at the same time, if your Joes bring some shit up, right? Like your Joes hear you talking to another NCO about that, I know that I would be from a Joe mentality like, man, that dude's fucked up.
Yeah.
Or from my angle, I would be worried that they're going to think that I'm like no longer processing information correctly. Not.
Well, I mean,
not. But they don't need to know that.
Yeah, true. but who's to say they are at the end of the day, right? Because it's all the same fucking problem. We're all having the same problem, right? And Ski said that he's never been able to express it to somebody else, or it's hard to express it to somebody else, which is the first problem. right?
Right.
Is I have internal states within me that I'm trying to show to somebody else so that they can feel me, right? That's what you're doing with your wife. You want her to understand you and feel what it is that you're feeling so that you are not alone. And that puts you in a very vulnerable state a lot of the time when you're like, hey, I'm feeling this. And then you put your heart out there, and then sometimes it just gets fucking smacked to the ground.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of my personal arguments have started with me being like, hey, can I tell you something?
Yep.
This is an issue I'm having. And then all of a sudden it just devolves into this like bickering and argument. It's like, how did we fucking get here?
Well,
dude?
I want to be careful in this conversation now, right? Because there are things that are your responsibility as a human to deal with, and there are things that in a relationship that should be shared by both, right? So there are times where you feel like you're putting your heart out there and it's getting smacked, when in actuality you're projecting some responsibility onto your partner that's not necessarily even theirs to begin with.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Oof.
So
Absolutely. Because there's a fine line between being open and being fucking pushy projection.
yeah,
Like,
codependent.
you can, yeah, there, perfect. Open and codependency.
So I feel like for me, and this is going to be like a strategic level argument now, right? We're switching out of the organizational and the direct, and at a strategic level, I feel like society has been sophisticating, right? We're no longer at that base Maslow's hierarchy of needs of like food, water, shelter, sex, and we're just now understanding what esteem needs are to get to the next level of what self-actualization is. So when we're talking about this stuff and you're saying that like if you talked about it you would lose your credibility, I feel like it's done nothing but help my credibility. You know what I mean? Like these kids will come out of the woodwork. Like we were having conversations the other day at dinner, and a dude wanted to just stand there to work there, just
Right.
wanted to stand and listen to what it was that we were talking about, right?
But it shows the fallacies built into us that we think that if we show a vulnerability, that gate is open.
True.
We are now no longer able to function as part of the wall.
But this I feel like is the definition of toxic masculinity, right? Where
Yeah.
like
You have to break that mold.
yeah. Because you have people right now like Andrew Tate that are running Facebook and Instagram, and they're saying the most ignorant shit, like the most Chad shit that you've heard other dudes say, but
Right.
it's stupid. Like what you are
Right.
is dumb. I don't agree with you, and people I think just hate watch him, and I think that just goes into society. We pay more attention to the things that we don't like than the things that we actually do like. Right,
Absolutely.
that's something to be said about all of us, and that goes back to the point of what you see in somebody else tells you more about you than it does about that other person. And yeah, that's where I'm at with all of that.
Absolutely. The hard fought problem with that though is I think that we're evolutionarily like wired to view those negatives and to find all those flaws and issues and all that shit. I don't know how much of that is from the military as it is from a human progressive thought. That we didn't learn much that like fire cooks food, but you'll be fucking like, you know what I mean? Like you'll negate that fire can burn you. Or not negate, rather, but focus on that fire can burn you. It's far more detrimental in your mind than it is health. It doesn't cook the meal; it can burn you.
No,
Right?
we were fundamentally focused on the negative. I mean,
Absolutely.
most of the conversations we've had today have been about the negatives that we focus on ourselves. Like, as a human being, we seek out the negative. It's easier to watch and deal with the negative than it is to find the positive in your life.
Absolutely.
So hunt the good stuff doesn't sound so stupid now, huh?
Yeah, no
No,
shit.
I was going to go there. Yeah.
Yeah, but it sucks that the stigma is so built around everything to be a negative as well. So it's even the self-help progression is built around, well, that guy's fucked up now, or I gotta watch him now, or well, I can't trust him behind me because he doesn't even fucking trust himself. And meanwhile, you're going home and losing your marbles too. He's just open enough to do it.
The thing that's helped me the most, I feel, is viewing everything that happens to me or happens around me or that I see as either good or at the very least necessary. So a conspiracy theory is just like a negative consequence, right, narrative, that you can believe or whatever you can feel. So if I'm looking at something that happens in my life and it looks to me to be negative, I'm like, why is that negative? What is it that I want that to be? What is this trying to teach me, and what can I learn from this? So at the end of the day, it's necessary for me to learn from it in order to get to this next, level, or this next level of understanding, as it so happens to be. So then things don't I'm no longer a victim of my reality. I'm like an active participant in life, I guess is the way I would say it.
Okay. I mean, that's probably the most productive way to start analyzing your surroundings and what people can take away from conversations like this to be applied right now. I know that during our training, we had that moment where I don't view my reality usually as any sort of purpose. I am the purposer, right? That I assign the meaning to these things. And we did a mental exercise where I reversed that and was like, everything being presented to me is like a lesson to be learned by me. Right, I'm now the teacher, or the learner, the student, instead of the teacher.
Yep.
And it was a really interesting 24-hour period to really focus on doing that, and I think it was extremely beneficial.
So let's explain that a little bit to Ski, because I don't think he understands it, because it was a kind of a long conversation.
Sure, yeah, it was. So
What are you trying to say?
it was probably like half a day of us fucking ranting and raving.
We were doing patrol bases, so like we had all day to just sit there and talk. You know what I mean?
It was
so
a good like
debate
network to focus into. So I am still under the belief, or the interpretation of my surroundings, that nothing means anything until I assign that meaning to it. So if someone's rude to you at the store, right, it's because they fucking hate cops, or they're racist, whatever. Instead of what were some examples that we used? Astrology and shit is a perfect example of all that too. Is that people are fucking generating meanings to stars. Stars have no fucking meaning. They're just part of our reality. There's nothing there. We just give it purpose because we have to have reason, because we live linear lives. That you're born, you live, you die, that book shuts. There's gotta be reasons why. When in a knee-jerk everyday mentality for myself is, it's like, no, we just fucking generate books. We generate stories, we generate rationality and meaning to these things, because without it, we feel useless. So people have to have a meaning generation behind it. Well, the caveat of that is that there's actually a fucking purpose to the things you're seeing, and there's actually a world that you're supposed to be part of. Not just making up because it makes you feel good. There's a world that you're supposed to be enjoying, that's supposed to be seeing.
I think that's the hardest thing for veterans, and especially on active duty, this would have been the hardest thing for me to see, is that I can't trust my eyes always. No. Right? I remember a time where like I was coming in and my wife was on the bed and she had headphones in, right? Like just the real thin, slick ones. And I just remember thinking in my head, oh, she's wearing white headphones. You know what I'm saying? Just quantifying whatever the fuck it was that I was saying for no reason in particular. And I lay down and I roll over to talk to her and I'm like, oh, those are actually green. So I just applied a pattern to something that I didn't actually see. So Alan Watts says something along the lines of, our average everyday consciousness leaves out more than it takes in. So like even in the room that you're sitting in right now, what you're applying your attention to is what you see. The rest of this is being filled in. The blanks are being filled in, right? So in the Army, we get taught to like 525 or 0525s, 200s. Look at your feet, look at the 5 feet around your feet, because you're looking for bombs, and if you don't find the bombs, you die. And so we have a lot of trust in our sensory apparatuses, but the truth is that our brains apply patterns to things that we don't necessarily see or hear. So a lot of this stuff is being projected into our reality from us. And then this brings in the next piece where it's like, I don't have direct access to reality because it's all being mediated through my senses, right? Where like at the extreme of this is everybody else isn't real. I'm the only thing that's real. Everything's a simulation. All of this stuff is being presented to me, right? Like Descartes type stuff. And then you begin to understand or see this kind of stuff the more you pay attention to like the PTSD realm, where like, so I have MDD, which is massive or major depressive disorder, and in MDD, when you're in a depressive episode, you can have a psychotic episode where like you start to see shit that is not there, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm seeing a fucking pink elephant behind me. What it means is like I'm seeing the government try to fucking kill me because of decisions that they're making that I can create this logic tree to that may or may not be true, right? On the outside
Right.
looking in, it might be true. Cool, yeah, but why is that what you're focused on? Whoop de whoop and yada yada. So with this purpose thing, the way that I approach this is my brain is projecting it anyway. Why was it my brain projecting that specific thing? What was it trying to tell me? What am I trying to tell myself? Right? So like sometimes I'll put headphones in and I call it botting out, you know what I mean? Where you're doing some menial task where you've done it a million times so you can like split your consciousness, which is kind of what EMDR is doing when you're doing that light bar. And then I'll just listen to the conversations around me and I'll be like, why did I hear that? Why was that what I'm hearing? Right, and it happened the most, right, the absolute most when I was at home with my wife and my mother-in-law, and I would be on the couch with the kids and I would hear them behind me talking. And Ski knows a little bit about my past. Ski probably knows more than Hudson does, but I left her, right, and I did some real fucked up shit. So every time they would talk, I thought they were talking shit about me, right? Everything was about me. Imagine the narcissistic ego that I have to have in order to believe that every conversation that's happening around me is about me. And it's always negative. Oh, he's a
Well,
piece
so
of
I was
shit.
about to bring that up with what you were saying is that the lowest form of these depressive episode hallucinations, for lack of better terminology, is that you're at work and you hear people laughing as you walk in the door. They're laughing at me.
Yep.
There's no fucking second chance argument to that. No, they're laughing at me.
No,
I
automatically,
fucking
yes.
look stupid.
Yep.
Right?
So I did something stupid.
Mhm.
And then you
Yeah,
start
like,
looking
you
at your
start-
feet. You're like, what?
Yeah, bro, you start looking at yourself and like overthinking how you're
Yeah.
walking and shit. You're like, "Well, fucking stupid." You go in the bathroom and check, you have food on your face and shit. So these are those low level things. And when we were having a conversation at dinner last weekend, this is something that I thought was effective for me, is because we usually discuss at the extreme levels of these byproducts, such as, well, the extreme of depressive episodes could be suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations, anything like that. Well, I know in my experience, the majority of my day was just intrusive thoughts. That I was having these dictations of hallucinations as well before I would fall asleep. I would see imagery that sometimes wasn't even relative to me. It wasn't even mine. I don't know whose it was. It was just bad fucking images popping into my head. And then everything at work, well, like, I'm fucked up. Like, they're laughing at me. That email's about me. Like, keep your fucking patrol vehicle clean. It's like, that's about me, dude. Like, he had to have seen my shit. He doesn't even work in my same area, but he had to have just stopped by and, like, looked in my window and saw my shit. Everything becomes like a sign to you in those moments.
But that's your
Fucking
echo, right? That's the shadow. So like,
right.
if we're gonna have an honest statement, if there was an honest statement to be said about an omnipotent being in my life that knows everything about me, it would be me, right? It's me. I know everything. So that can be simultaneously like the higher self, or whatever some people want to call it, or my shadow. So my shadow knows everything too. So he's gonna be the one that's like, hey bro, would you clean your shit? Isn't it you, bro? Like, your shit was dirty the other day. And you can, when you have a dirty closet, I could say, right, you have a lot of secrets, that voice is a lot louder. And there's a lot, and there's a lot of anger and guilt and shame, I think, are the two biggest ones. Guilt and shame. And when those two emotions are controlling you, things get real sad real fucking fast, and everybody is out to get you real fast. And the only way to get rid of those two is to be honest. But in order to be honest in this realm, like this internal realm, you have to have emotional intelligence, which even fucking Jordan Peterson doesn't believe exists, right? So these are like mainstream psychologists that don't understand that in order for me to express an emotion, I have to be able to identify said emotion, and that would be emotional intelligence. It is intelligible to me, right? And that's what most of us struggle with, is like, what is it that I'm feeling? What am I ashamed of right now? What am I is
Right.
it even something that I should be ashamed of? So
Right.
just so everybody's
that's-
aware, Nixon and Sanchez had to say goodbye. So they got the
I was
kids.
wondering why they bounced out. I didn't know if they disconnected or not. I know that's one of my most difficult moments on a day-to-day life is that I will go through. I processed this with Danley a little bit that I was worried that most of my depressive states is like it's roller coaster in nature, right? That I'll go through these lulls and then I'll be okay. I'm always worried that that okay phase is more of a manic state. That I'm like just processing information, like everything's great because I'm great and the life is okay, and then I can see that crash occurring. And it's only been this last year that I've been able to actually see the repetitious nature, the habitual revisiting of these things. And
Is
even
Beachy
in
still
that,
there?
yeah, Beachy's here.
Okay. No, you're good.
He's
He's
around.
muted right now.
You guys are in way more deep thought than I am, so I'm just kind of here listening.
So I know that in those, that when I tip over that line and I start to go into those depressive states, I can't tell what I'm feeling left, right, or center. I just went through it today after I finished my workout, went to go get lunch with my girlfriend. All of a sudden, my mood just fucking. And there's things that I can identify that are triggering those moments, but I can't figure out what I'm feeling. Is it anxiety? Is it sadness? Is it literally just feeling like I wish I had more attention right now? Like, how petty does this emotional line get? And from that becomes a byproduct of being like, everything you're feeling is petty because you're weak. And then it's like this way fucking hammering self-talk that just doesn't process correctly. And then it's silly to say out loud because when you get to say that portion, you're like, fuck, dude, like, your problem is more next tier than what you're processing it at right now. You're looking at the byproducts instead of the factory. You're looking at the product instead of what's creating these
Dude,
products.
I can't tell you how many times I've been in a fight with my wife and I'm angry, boy. Like, I'm mad. And there's like this logic train going in my head. This means this means this means this means this. And then she's like, talk to me. And I've been doing enough therapy and I've you know what I'm saying? I've been doing this for a long time. So I'm like, all right, fine. I know I should talk to her about it because she's being a fucking bitch and she's going to know. And I have the fucking receipts this time, right? And then I'll start saying the shit out loud, and slowly but surely I realize how fucking stupid I sound. Like, this echo chamber that my brain is doesn't allow it. It's different once you hear it outside your own head. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm like, fuck.
Is it stupid, or can you say, like, for me, a lot of it's immaturity in a lot of ways. For me, like, when I start sitting there and I allow these things to set me off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's probably a way better way to say it than I'm stupid.
But to focus in on that, remember that it's emotional immaturity. It's not that you are childish.
Yeah.
It is that you don't. It's the literal definition. It's that this has not matured. This thought process has not come to its ability to be processed yet. I'm not a child. I'm not stupid. I just don't fucking get what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think that's important for people who listen to these things to be able to be told, like, hey, it's okay to be still in that growth mentality. I think everyone here in this chat is still processing their shit too.
Bro, none of us knew what to do.
No, I struggle with self-doubt every goddamn day.
None of us knew how to do Battle Drill 6 until we ran it fucking 600 goddamn times a week. You know what I mean? It's about the habituation and the practice. But if
and even at that, I find myself on a daily basis. Not daily. So anytime someone questions my credibility, I get hella defensive, and that's all of a sudden where the persona in me comes forward. That the positive side of an echo comes out. I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, I know what I'm talking about. Like, I get mad, upset about it. But I've spent the entire day prior to that being like, bro, you don't have a fucking clue what you're doing. Like, you should not be here. Like,
100%.
Imposter syndrome shit's going off, and you're like, I'm not qualified to be here. I suck. And then anyone fucking targets that, you're like, fuck you, dude. Here's my self-worth. And you can't do that for yourself on a daily basis, which makes no fucking sense.
No, I get you. I struggle with self-doubt, like, on a daily basis. Like, there's a few things that stick out in my mind. Like, one of them, you and I, Danley, were in the field somewhere, and we were talking about all these new privates, and, like, at one point you had said, like, yo, you're a fucking a decent dude, like, you know what you're doing, and, like, I remember that now, and it was years ago when you said that. Right, and like again, like I said, I struggle with self-doubt. So like I don't think I'm as good as I should be or as good as I could be, and so on and so forth. And there's a few things that I've done. So like at one point I got drill of the cycle, and currently I've been in fucking I haven't been in a job since I've been at Fort Hood more than 2.5 weeks, because I'll get somewhere. I was a weapons squad leader when I showed up. Hey, you're gonna go take over this platoon. I got there, I fixed those issues. Now I'm going to another fucking platoon. It's been 2.5 weeks, and I'm like, why are these guys fighting over me? Why are they trying to? Why is Sergeant Major pulling me in his office, telling me I'm gonna go do this now? Like I don't see it, and it's
right.
Fort Hood
needs
good NCOs. Fort Hood needs good NCOs. That place was a shithole when I was there.
It is. It still is.
It's fucking horrible.
I know for me is that I'm always self-comparing to this pedestal version of people that I've met in my past that were like SMEs, like you're perfect, like you're the best NCO I've ever met, you're the best shooter I've ever met, you're the best fucking SWAT operator I've ever met, and you compare them, but meanwhile, all you're doing is comparing them to this literal hologram of what you perceive them to be in that moment, because they were either teaching you or leading you in something that they knew about.
But the Army does that.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
Army instills that deeply, because what do you do when you look at someone's uniform? You're looking at their badges, have they deployed, what's their rank, and you're always comparing yourself to the next individual. And that's a very toxic mentality to be doing.
But what you never get the opportunity to do is to compare yourself to someone that doesn't know as much as you. And so that's something that I've struggled with.
You do that all the time with the privates. You
kind
compare,
of, but in a realm of like, it's almost like you don't fucking know anything. So when you teach them something and they're not grasping it, you're like, you fucking suck. Like it's not, you're not here yet. That guy's fucking dumb.
There's a book about World War II and all of the men that died, and I can't remember what it was, but there's a concept in it where like the generation that was raised by a picture on the mantle, right? So these mothers are teaching their sons, like, your dad was an amazing dude. Your dad was a fucking this, that, and the other. Your dad wouldn't have done that. Your dad wouldn't have done that. And meanwhile, when this dude was alive, he was a drunk and he used to beat the shit out of her, right? So you're trying to live up to an image of something that never even existed in the first place.
Bingo.
So
a lot of my childhood was that actually. My oldest brother is 18 years older than me. I had to learn in kindergarten that he existed. But all through my life, my parents were like, well, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't have been there. He wouldn't have seen that. Yeah, so a lot of my like developmental processes through that era was like I represented him, and he was supposed to represent the best versions of me. And instead, like now as an adult, like I've gotten to learn who he is. Bro, he sucks. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like in a lot of ways, like he's fucked up a lot of his life, and even in that era, even in the worship era, he was just lying. So it's like it's fucking really frustrating to have these moments, right? But it's healthy to be able to reflect on that and be like, it's okay to see the hologram and then apply meaning to the hologram beyond what you were initially taught. Like that dude probably isn't that great at these things, or if we were to flip the script and I was to teach you about something I know, I would look fucking great to you too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it's okay to level the playing field a little bit and acknowledge yourself as decent. I can promise you, after these conversations, I'm going to spend the night like, man, I should be fucking stronger in the gym. I should have prepared for. I've got SWAT training tomorrow again. And I was like, well, I haven't fucking done anything to be good at that today. Like, you know what I mean? You're going to self-torment on those things.
Well, it's also really hard to quantify what this does for you, like this conversation specifically, even listening to it, like what does it do? And for me, it's always been, everything has always been about exposure to information, right? There's something that I always said to privates is like, if you're ignorant to this, right? I always ask, like, has anybody ever taught you this before? And they're like, no, Sergeant. I'm like, all right, this is your one time. And then I teach it
That's
to
their
you.
cop out.
Yep. See? Auto trust issue. Fuck you, you were taught this.
Everyone gets one free one.
Yeah, you get a free one. And then once I've taught it to you, then I can hold you accountable to it. Mm-hmm. But then you add that up to like, let's just create a kid real quick, right? Like the kid grows up and his dad is in prison. The mom is on welfare. has like 30 or 40, or not 30 or 40, like 20 dudes in and out of his life. You know, she's trying to find a good dude and whatever. And then his mom's on drugs, and he lives in like a real poor neighborhood. Like, what exposure to information does that kid have that's going to better for his betterment, right, in the long run?
Barely.
You see what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
how do you really hold that kid accountable for his behavior when he's been habituated or like trained basically to do this said thing? So for me, it's like, that's how I kind of approach most interactions with people. It's like, all right, have you been to therapy? No? Okay, so now I can see why you're projecting and why you're doing this. And I kind of like, I put up like some armor, right, mentally, of like, yeah, some of what he's going to say to me has nothing to do with me, but it's still probably a good idea to like vet what he's saying. So like, you're a turd. And then I turn around and look at myself like, no, I'm good. All right. And then I go about my day, right? But most men go about this idea of like, no one can teach me anything because I already know. And if I don't know and I present as if I don't know, I somehow lost some status or whatever. And in my life, I've learned now that there's known knowns, so there's things that I know. There's known unknowns. There's things that I know for sure that I don't know. And then there's unknown unknowns. There's things that I don't even know that I don't know. And the weird thing about this is the more knowns, like the more things I learn, the more things I learn that I don't know. And therefore, the more things I learn that I don't know, that unknown becomes even bigger. So, and that's daunting at first, especially coming out of the Army thinking that you know everything, right? Like,
Right.
I'm right and wrong. I know for sure what I need to do and this, that, and the other. And then you come out here and all of these opportunities become so fucking heavy, right? Like it just, you don't even, there's so many choices that it's impossible to choose. And that shit fucked me up for the longest time.
And the byproduct of that is I know that when I first got out of the Army, I was frustrated with the choices presented to me. So I was like, I just fucking kind of do everything I can. So I was bored on terminal leave, went to college. That was my like solution to boredom. I'm gonna go learn about computers because I don't fucking know anything about them. I'm gonna go be a cop because I like SWAT shit. Got to do that in active duty. Fell in love with that. Ended up on patrol with just as a caveat for a moment. With the hypothetical kid that you brought up, what he sees a lot of, I promise you, is law enforcement. He sees a lot of cops, a lot. Is that hypothetical kid I will see tomorrow on shift? I guarantee. I see them every single week. I see those children.
But even then, how are you going to give him some positive information because he's going to see you as the enemy? It's the same as those kids in Afghanistan, right?
So it becomes a hearts and minds campaign, and this is what I've talked to my co-workers about when I worked for the police department and now at the sheriff's office, is that this is your opportunity to be nice. This is your opportunity to not pose yourself as the threat. Don't ask questions like, well, where does mom go at night, huh? Like, ask the kid what he fucking likes to do. Don't probe him for information of how to fuck his mom up and get her in jail. Pose yourself as a better version of things. Be the dad that he doesn't have. Be the mom he doesn't have. Ask him what makes him happy. Ask him, like, well, what do you plan on doing today? Like, are you going to have any friends over? Like, what are you doing? Instead of fucking treating him like he's an intel source to gather ways, like, you already know his mom's on dope. You already fucking know that. That's why you're at the house. You're going to gain your intel for that later on. Treat the kid with fucking some decency. Let him see that not all cops are fucking bad. Not everyone's out to get you. No, like, the cops aren't the fucking enemy. In a lot of cases, though, they are. You have these fucking cops that treat kids like intel sources because they think they're stupid. I can ask you, like, well, when does mom's visitors come over? Like, is it at night? Yeah, it's at night? Oh, how many of them? How long do they stay for? When you see them, what kind of clothes are they wearing? Do they drive cars? Do they ride bicycles? Like, fuck you, dude. Like, you're going to figure that shit out. You're on night shift. Go sit outside of their fucking neighborhood. Like, treat the kid with decency in the moment.
Yeah.
Build rapport. The kid will give you information voluntary if he feels like you deserve it.
So getting out, I also like struggled a lot with like purpose, because in the Army, purpose is provided to you. That shit's in the op order. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I feel like what you just talked about touches on the purpose of all of the GWAT era, right? So we saw what it was in Afghanistan to be indoctrinated into a way of thinking and believing that you are right. You know what I mean? So like, this religion has taught these kids to do this thing, and the person that's teaching them is the only one that can read or write. So these people there is no opportunity for them to know anything different. So how do you even blame them? Like, at this point, I can't blame them. Then the question becomes like, well, how is what we're doing more right? And then for me, it just goes back to that direct level of like the internal representation of what is good, right? Does it make people feel good? Well, what does that even mean? Well, I feel like being nice to somebody, like doing what they want or like what they need, for instance, is good. Being nice to somebody, like, how was your day? Acknowledging their existence, shit like that, you know what I'm saying? And then we have the same problems of this, what is the word I want to use here? Exposure to information or knowledge, we can call it, that we have that same problem in America. And you saw
we do,
it.
and I can touch on that.
Yeah. Good. Good.
So as a drill, right? They got kids straight out of high school, right? I had to teach kids how to address a letter. An 18-year-old fresh out of high school has no idea how to address a letter to his family. No idea. We had kids that we'd give them stamps, didn't know what they're for. They would put mail in and it would come back because it didn't have a stamp. Like, just general knowledge. Didn't know how to pay their own bills because they had never been shown. No one had ever taught them because everyone had always done it for them. They can do crazy things on their phone that I don't even know how to do, but can't pay their own bills, can't write their own letters, don't know how to do basic level human being, what I believe to be human being, take care of yourself shit. And it's because as a society, the parents do everything for them. We provide everything. We don't give them the opportunity to learn because we don't give them the opportunity to take risk. If it's calculated risk, let them take the risk. But it's, no one does that nowadays. When I was a kid, I went outside. If it got dark, I probably came home. Nowadays, that's sit on your tablet on the couch and do this because I know where you are and it's safe and I can, I have accountability of you and it's better and easier for me.
So the problem is parenting, and I agree with you, but there's no unified doctrine of parenting, like what it is to be a good parent, what it is to be parented well, because all of us were parented like shit. So that just scraps our entire childhood. Like, if you go back to your childhood and say this is the good thing, well, it's like, well, but they were also beating you, so that's not good. Or they were also telling you that you're a piece of shit every day and that you're not worth anything, so that's not good. So it's what is good. And for me, it's that journey through therapy of like figuring yourself out. Then you can determine, how do I get my kid, because my greatest fear is that my kids have that internal argument that me and we were all talking about, and I have no answers for them how to solve it. That's my greatest fear, is I don't want them to have the same generational trauma that I grew up with. So trying to break this generational curse at me is like that's my purpose, is to figure out what the fuck is going on in my head, why is it happening, and how can I help my kids not go through this? Or when they go through it, I have the answers to help them through it. Right? I can be the light on the other side of the tunnel, like, yeah, suicidal thoughts suck. And arguing with yourself is pretty fucking hard. But you're not right all the time. You are wrong sometimes. And that's like the key belief that you have to hold on to, is that I'm not always fucking right. And we can say that out loud, but do we really believe that? Because then when it comes to trusting that somebody is telling me the truth, or my wife is telling me the truth, I'm over here thinking that I know better. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at in that whole.
Absolutely. And be able to actually acknowledge those moments, though. Being able to take that step back in a debate, an argument, whatever it is, whatever's upsetting you in the moment, be like, where is this coming from? What is the contributing factor? And be able to walk those things back to their root, especially when you're arguing with someone else, because you're subjecting them to possibly your own shit. They might be subjecting you to their shit, but without walking it backwards, you won't know that. You won't know.
So
that's something I struggle with.
Does anybody have any burning desires, as they call it in AA? Does anybody want to say anything? BiT, you say?
I'm just listening, man.
All right. Well, I think this is as good a time as any to stop. So
100%.
Okay.
that'll be the end of that.